Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, signed. 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 Committee Room 29. 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 Signed. Committee Room 29, 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 signed. Committee Room 29. 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 Signed. Committee Room 29, Sound. 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 Committee Room 29.
Support then. Thanks. We'll ask Pi to have a look at that. Confirmed open, Chair?
Yep. Okay, members, thank you to Fáilte Rove. You're all very welcome to this morning's meeting, the 84th meeting of the Committee for Communities. Can I remind anyone in the public gallery that mobile phones must be turned off. Mobile tablet devices can, however, be used through a Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. Password details are available in the gallery for anyone wanting to connect to Assembly's Wi-Fi network. No recordings or photographs are to be taken. Can I also remind members about the protocols regarding the use of electronic devices? Please switch all mobile devices to airplane mode and activate Wi-Fi connection. Please also use tablet devices discreetly and in a way which does not interfere with proceedings, and be aware of the cameras when using the tablet device. I would also like to remind you once again about the sensitivity of the microphones. And for members joining via Zoom, can you please be mindful of whether your camera is picking up any background images. Agenda item 1, members' declaration of interests. And I would remind members of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Does any member have any interest to declare in relation to any of today's agenda items? Melissa?
Member of Conor na Gaeilge and Cahirloch of Niscol na Jerriga.
Yeah. Any other interest, members? No, members content, thank you. Moving on then to apologies, agenda item 2. Are members aware of any apologies? Clerk?
No.
Okay. Okay, members, Chair's business then. So I advised members at last week's meeting that I will be meeting with departmental officials, the Minister and the Permanent Secretary on Monday regarding the Committee's response to the draft anti-poverty strategy and our report following the sessions with local government representatives. The Clerk and I attended the meeting with the Minister and his officials. Although it was a short meeting, the Minister did advise that the next version of the strategy should look different and reflect the issues raised in the consultation. A short memo from the Clerk with a meeting summary can be found at page 3 of the table papers. Do members have any comments or content? Members will also be aware that I spoke as Chair in relation to the draft budget at the plenary debate on Monday afternoon. And finally, members, I also wish to advise that I have been invited as Chair to deliver the opening remarks at the KES seminar scheduled for Wednesday 17th of June in the Long Gallery. This seminar addresses themes that are relevant to the Committee's remit. Are members content that I attend as Chair of the Committee and provide opening remarks? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, members then, agenda item 4, draft minutes, which are contained at page 7 of your pack. Do members have any edits or amendments to the draft minutes? Members content? Thank you. Okay. Okay, members content that those are signed by me on behalf of the committee. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, SL1, registered rents increase, in brackets, increase order NI 2026. Members, by way of reminder, the initial correspondence in relation to this SL1 was received on the 2nd of April during the Easter recess, and accompanying SR and EM was received on the 8th of April and therefore was considered under the new process for delegated legislation. The relevant papers can be found in the meeting pack starting at page 18. Members will recall that we considered this rule on the 23rd of April and that we received a briefing from the department at that meeting. We then agreed to a number of actions, including extend the 4-week consideration period due to recess being discounted from the 4-week period, to publish the department's papers, to issue a call for evidence with a closing date of 7th of May, no responses were received, and to reconsider the SL1 together with any responses from the call for evidence. Do members have any comments, or are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule? Content? Thank you, members. Agenda item 6 then is retention and disposal schedule for the Executive Office. Members, this schedule was considered by the Committee for the Executive Office at its meeting yesterday, when members indicated that they would defer their decision with regard to it for a further week pending a response to a query from Prony. So can I ask members that, given that deferral, are members content that we also defer a decision in relation to this schedule for a week, awaiting confirmation on whether TEO committee is content with the schedule or not? Members content? Yeah. Okay, I'll just check with the clerk. Will we go to another agenda item?
Yeah, I would suggest we move ahead to matters arising and correspondence. So agenda item 10, or pause until official.
We'll go to agenda item 10. We'll go to
10.
agenda item 10 and make progress. So agenda item 10, are members agreed we move to matters arising at agenda item 10?
Yeah.
Thank you. Members, you've been provided with a summary table of matters arising at page 196. We have a few responses to consider this week, and I will ask for comments as I go through each individually from 10.2 to 10.13. So 10.2 is a response from Ulster Supported Employment Limited, USEL, following our request for its view on the positive and negative aspects of the employment support scheme, following our briefing from the department officials on the 30th of April 2026. Do members have any comments or any views they would like to raise in relation to that? No, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10.3, or item 10.3 within the matters arising. That's a substantial response from the head of the civil service regarding equality impact assessments and cross-departmental cooperation. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise in relation to this? Sian, I know Sian had raised this initially.
Yeah, so it's particularly around the children's rights impact assessments. I would really be keen to hear from the Children's Commissioner. I think that they, once the information has been sought either from the Children's Law Centre and from the Equality Commission, I think it would be really useful for us to hear directly from them. I think that there is an issue where our equality impact assessments can just be seen as a tick box, and I don't think that we are really seeing the breadth of impact on some of the decisions that this department is making, and I think for particularly around the children's rights impact assessments, I would be keen to see a wee bit more detail if possible. So I think could even be writing to either the Children's Law Centre and the Equality Commission, but also through to I know that the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People has been really quite strong on the impact on children of this department and other departments' decisions. So I would really welcome their views on it as well, if possible.
Would members be content? Maybe a joint briefing, would that be in order?
Yeah, if a briefing is if we're able to schedule in a briefing, I know that our time is now tight, or even a written briefing, but I do think that this is something that we need to drill into, particularly for when we look at the anti-poverty strategy and you look at the impact that has, particularly on children. I don't know that we're really drilling down into that impact as much as we should be and what we could be, and I don't know that impact assessments are just being used to their fullest of potential.
We'll take a written briefing first, and then we can decide whether we want to expand on that if members are content. Yep. Kelly?
Yeah, I think the point has been missed in this response. While it's quite detailed, when you look through the response on page 205, it talks about full equality impact assessments. That suggests to me that as a scrutiny committee, we don't, in fact, nobody gets to see the full equality impact assessments. My issue is that we're constantly told that equality impact assessments haven't, they're not going to be detrimental across all the Section 75, but we're not seeing the positive actions. And while it says in the letter that these are published on websites, I went and looked at a number of the equality impact assessments, and no, they're not. So I have to ask, why is it that the scrutiny committees are not being told of the positive actions that are being taken to take out any discrimination or any thoughts of discrimination that a policy is having? On that basis, I think there's further questions need to be examined on this. As a scrutiny of the information that we're being provided, I'm not being provided enough information to make sure that what the final decision that has been made has actually taken all of the issues out of the way. And as Shan has said, this tick box exercise has to stop. It's been called for years that equality impact assessments shouldn't just say there's no detrimental impact or everybody has a detrimental impact, that it should actually say, as this policy will lead to these positive impacts. That's supposed to be part of the process of reporting, and if we're not getting it, then we have to seek that out. So I think if we're getting the information, we need to be ensuring that that is teased out a lot more. And I would welcome a consideration with the interim permanent secretary of TEO when they're reviewing, that we actually have a conversation with them about that.
Yeah, and I suppose that work has to have been carried out, so not getting the information, it's not that much more to provide the information, because no equality impact assessment would be worth the paper certain if those actions hadn't been explored and assessed. So what's the question in relation to writing the further question? We've agreed that we'll get the views from those important bodies, but in terms of further question, Kelly, what's the detail of what's the question?
Well, she's the head of policy profession for NICS, which is the TEO the Permanent Secretary of the Executive Office, is saying that there's a policy practitioners meeting. I think it would be useful to ask them what considerations that they will have as an outcome of this committee, to ask that the report does include the positive impacts, because, to be quite frank, they're not on the websites.
Okay, members content with that? Clerk, are you content?
Yes, can I just check, is the committee content that this letter be circulated for context too when we write to the Permanent Secretary? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, thank you, members. Then item 10.4 is a response from the Minister of Health in relation to the committee's inquiry on information provided to service providers on the Help with Health Costs scheme. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise? Kelly?
Yeah, it was just to say our question was actually asking as well about what information was provided to the people who get the services, and there's been virtually nothing out there. I'm still getting calls from people concerned about dental treatment and so on. So they need to know, do I have to prove that I'm on a benefit when I go into a practitioner's office? So if we could go back and write and ask how many times that people who are on the relevant benefits have been notified about this.
Yeah. Members content? Yeah.
The department DFC or health DFC?
Health isn't doing anything for patients.
Okay, item 10.5 then is from the department and is an update on the TIMS review of personal independence payments. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise in relation to that item? Sian?
Yeah, I'd raised before, Chair, that I was really concerned that there was nobody actually on that panel from Northern Ireland to present the voice of people from here receiving PIP, and I'm still very concerned around the voice of our local cohort of PIP recipients. I don't see much in terms of what the department is actually doing to facilitate that voice being heard within the review, and that just concerns me. So I am just, again, I understand that the response we have is how the review will gather evidence, that call for evidence, but I just feel like there's a piece missing there in terms of how is the department actually reaching out to PIP recipients to ensure that cohort is actually being heard? Are they facilitating the workshops in an accessible way? Are people going to be compensated in any way? Because that is another barrier for people actually giving their time and their voice to this, particularly when you're already in a vulnerable cohort. I want to know more about that from the department. What are they doing specifically to facilitate the voice of disabled people in Northern Ireland who are in receipt of PIP, and are they compensating, or are they removing any barriers to participation in that consultation process?
Members content? Yeah. Thank you, members. So I'm advised, members, that the Minister and Permanent Secretary are here now and ready to start. So I propose that we suspend at this point within matters arising at item 10.6 and return at item 10.6, but that we go ahead and move to the ministerial briefing. Members content?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Pardon?
Morning.
Morning. Morning.
Okay, welcome the Minister and Permanent Secretary and Ian Greenway to the meeting. We're resuming now at agenda item 7, in a place name project and draft anti-poverty strategy, and an oral briefing from the Minister for Communities, Cathy. So I'd like to welcome and thank the Minister for attendance, given the short notice following last week's meeting to discuss these two issues. This is an additional session, members, and just to emphasise, it is not in place of the ministerial planned June session with the Minister and officials. I also want to make it clear from the outset that last week I proposed that the Minister attend today because I was keen for committee to ask scrutiny questions in relation to this. I am also aware, members, that there has been overnight reports in the media in a related subject in relation to the Irish language strategy, a court case which is ongoing. Before this agenda item begins, I wish to remind members that legal proceedings are currently active in relation to the Irish language strategy. Under Standing Order 73, the committee must not discuss matters which are sub judice, except to the extent that the Chair is satisfied that such consideration would not prejudice those proceedings. Members should therefore avoid making reference to details of the ongoing legal challenge or expressing views which could be seen to anticipate or influence the outcome of those proceedings. Questions should instead focus on general policy, process and administration. If I consider that the line of questioning risks breaching the sub judice rule, I will intervene accordingly. So, Minister, I want to go to yourself then. I suppose, given the place names issue is a further concern for people, that the department is not serious about Irish language and is not effectively bringing forward the measures that would see a strategy in place. I'll come to yourself then and I'll go to members' questions. Do you wish to make a statement, Minister?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to brief the committee today on the Northern Ireland Place Name Project and the Executive's anti-poverty strategy. I think this is particularly welcome because of the confusion in recent days and weeks. Just by way of background, the project was established nearly 40 years ago with the key aim to research and publish the origins and meanings of local place names. It also provides translations of street names at the request of local councils. And I suppose that this is the first point of confusion. The project is not, as some have called it, an Irish place names project. It researches and publishes the origins of place names, drawing from Scots, English, Norse and French traditions, as well as Irish. And as you know, celebrating all of our shared heritage is very important, because I believe that language and culture enrich our community, strengthen our sense of belonging and provide meaningful ways for people to connect with one another and the place that we share. Now, funding has been the second point of confusion in relation to this programme. Over the last 4 years, DFC have had oversight of this, but it has been funded by DOF. My officials actively sought assurances from DOF on funding in advance of this business year without any satisfactory conclusion. So to assist continued discussions on this, my department put temporary contingency arrangements in place to support the project into the summer. I want to be very clear on this. There was no decision by me or by anyone in my department to end the project or to allow it to come to an end. The situation was, however, far from ideal for the department and particularly for the university team. In that regard, I understand that personnel continuity has also been an element, perhaps the most significant element in the uncertainty in recent events, and one factor for the university in meeting its responsibilities as a responsible employer and in consideration of the future viability of the project. And unfortunately, that uncertainty continues. Members will be aware of the recent announcement by the Minister for the Economy to step in. At present, we do not have details on the nature or scope of the proposed support, but we remain open to engagement with colleagues across government to identify a way forward. In the meantime, my officials continue to work closely with the project director to ensure that the valuable database developed by the project remains accessible to researchers and to the public. I also recognise that demand for place name translation services continues, and as an interim measure, officials are providing support through our existing resources to ensure continuation of the necessary outputs from the work of this project. Mr. Chairman, I'm also happy to address some of the anti-poverty matters, but
I'm proposing we split those into two sessions. I think we'll try to manage it that we'll divide that time equally, because that's also an important issue that we want to come to. If members are agreed, I'm proposing that they'll just allocate time to members on an equal basis. Please indicate early if you want to address this subject. We'll then deal with anti-poverty in the second half. If members feel that they're not getting an answer to the question, please indicate that that's the case, and then we can come back to the Minister and redirect that question back to the actual issue. So if members are content, we'll move forward on that basis. I'm going to go first of all to our Deputy Chair, Cathy Mason. Thank you, Cathy.
Column. Minister, we've got place names. You're embroiled in court cases against the Irish language. You've removed the branding from your department. You're clearly blocking the development of an Irish language strategy. Like, you've got form on this. It's one thing after another. Why are you so afraid of the Irish language and Irish identity?
Well, I'm certainly not afraid of the Irish language or Irish identity, and Deputy Chair, I would like to focus on the facts, because accusations have been made about me, and I know that there is a narrative that some are trying to establish. I think you're at the forefront of that. But let's take the place names project. You're saying this is part of a pattern of behaviour, but I have presented...
Clearly is.
Well, let me explain that I have presented to this committee the evidence and the information around this. I absolutely have. I don't know if you haven't seen it. Was the committee provided with the emails around all of this? It was, thank you. So the information has been
Minister,
provided.
with all due respect, you're judged on your actions, not empty words on this. Is not the truth that you pulled this funding because you're terrified that there was 2,400 applications in Belfast alone, 990 of them are being progressed, suddenly this support just disappears? Is that incompetence or is that deliberate contempt?
I have set out the information and the facts. At no stage did any decision come to me, Deputy Chair. At no stage was I, and I know that you can sigh and you can roll your eyes, but I want to deal with the facts and to deal with the truth. You are determined to portray this as a decision that I have made when all of the facts and the evidence... I'm
not determined to do anything, Minister. I'll give you an example. I got an email last night. I'll read it out to you just so you can hear it directly. Cathy Akara, I'm writing as a concerned constituent. As a Gaeilgeoir, I am deflated and frustrated at Gordon Lyons and his deliberate attacks on our language and culture. Why is it that one side of our community gets the red carpet rolled out, while Irish language and culture gets the scraps? This is a minister whose actions clearly show contempt for our shared language. Is he lying?
It is not correct, and you're not correct in what you have said. You continue to assert that I took a decision to cut funding for this project. I did not do that.
Are you embroiled in court cases against the Irish language? Did you remove the Irish language signage from your department?
No. You see, this
Are you blocking the Irish language strategy?
No, I'm not.
Chair.
And here's what you're doing, Deputy Chair. You're continuing to move from one issue to the next. Let's deal with the place names project, because that's what I'm here primarily to talk about. And I have made it very clear, and the evidence is clear, and the evidence is in front of us, and I have officials here that will attest to what I am saying. And I'm sorry to bring you in like this, Ian, but was any decision brought to my desk on the place names project?
Mr. Chair, no decision was taken to the Minister, because actually we had a series of extensions in place that allowed us time to look at, as the Minister has said, a sustainable way forward. It appears some communications within Queen's between the administrative and the professional led to notice periods being invoked, and understandably individuals needed to make their decision at that point.
Okay,
Just a second, because I want to come in on that point, because I've heard you say, Minister, that this did not reach your desk, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I cannot understand that, because I have here the letter, not just from your desk, but with your signature on it,
Yes.
on the 9th of April,
Yes.
on this issue, raising concerns about this issue. So it
Yes.
certainly was on your desk.
No, there was no decision that was made by me as what you've accused me of, which is that I have cancelled funding. What the response to the Assembly question says is that the funding actually was being maintained and kept in place until summer 2026, until options could be considered. There's a very clear question here. Did I take a decision either to cut funding for this project or to let this project die? I didn't do any of those.
Commission
things.
is just as
There
bad
was-
as commission. I want to go back to
No,
Deputy
and
Chair's
that's
line. I was
exactly.
only coming in on that
Sorry,
point
Mr.
of
Chairman.
clarity. I was
Sorry,
only
Mr.
coming in on
Chairman.
that point of clarity, Minister,
Sorry,
to
Mr.
clarify
Chairman.
that it was certainly on your
This
desk.
is exactly the point. This is not an act of commission or omission. This did not come across my desk, and so
Minister,
you're
sorry,
wrong
but it very
on
clearly
that.
says that options are currently being assessed by my officials.
Yes.
And you have signed that.
Yes.
That's very clearly come right in front of your desk. Not only on your desk, you have signed it. Minister, sorry,
Yes.
your deflection and your
Briefly,
bluster
Kathy.
on this,
Kathy,
it's
you
just,
have
it's
got
just
this
continuous.
wrong. The
No,
evidence
sorry.
is in front of you.
My
and you can't
constituents
accept
don't have it wrong.
And
What my
do you know why your
constituents think
constituents
matters.
are saying that,
Minister,
Kathy?
sorry, the clue is in the title. The clue is in your title.
I'm trying to take part in a committee meeting here.
I'm going to allow the Deputy Chair to put this point, and then I'm moving on to the next member.
The clue is in your title. You're the Minister for Communities, not just one community. You don't get to pick and
Absolutely.
choose. You're the Minister for the GAA community.
Yes.
You're the Minister for the Irish language community. You're the Minister for those communities who are living in poverty. You're the Minister for the LGBTQ community. You are failing them all. The Irish language culture, the Irish language community is thriving, and it will continue to thrive despite your attacks on it, and we will support them every step of the way.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Very briefly, Minister. I
You
want
have to let me respond
Yeah,
to
I
that,
am
Kathy.
letting-
First of all, the reason why your constituents are writing to them like that is because you're whipping them up into a frenzy.
think your
Because
actions are doing that.
I have your Facebook post here, which says shameful behaviour from DUP Minister Gordon Lyons removing funding for Irish language street signs. That's wrong on 2 counts. First of all, I didn't remove any funding, as has been made so clear.
Minister, this is
And
a scrutiny
secondly, it wasn't
committee.
for Irish
Minister, this is a scrutiny
street
committee. Our
signs.
job is to scrutinise you, not to scrutinise social media posts. So,
But do you not
I
think
want-
the
I want
truth
to go-
is important,
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
Your
and
action- your
scrutiny-
actions show-
excuse me. I'm chairing this meeting. The scrutiny is also important, and it's a very, very short time span within which we have to do this scrutiny. I will ask all members to address their questions through the chair, and to, if you wish to intervene, to indicate to me as the chair ran directly. Sian, please.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Minister. What is your understanding currently of the Department for Economy's involvement? What information have you received? Has there been a minister-to-minister agreement? Have any discussions been ongoing at all between the two departments?
There has been no information that has been provided to us, and again, Ian, you can keep me right on this. We've sought some clarification, on that, but none has been provided. This has been portrayed primarily as a funding issue. The funding was not the main issue at play here. It was the staff that were in place, staff that had moved on. We had put contingency, as the chair has outlined in the response that I gave to his assembly question. Contingency was put in place that would have allowed this to continue into the summertime, but in the absence of staff who had moved on for different reasons, that wasn't able then to be put in place. So I'm not sure. From the Economy Minister, we have sought some clarification. We have not received that. As I've said, I'm happy to work with anyone on this to find a resolution, but I don't have that clarity that
Have
you're
any
asking for.
conversations been had with Queen's around the staffing issue, and what clarity can we get on that?
How do you answer that?
Just to augment the Minister's answer just there, we have been engaging with Queen's. We've talked informally to DFE colleagues. We are none the wiser on what this intervention might or might not be. In terms of the position in Queen's, there is a small team has been working on this, and I don't want to get this drawn into people that could easily be identified on the staff of Queen's. That would be unreasonable. Yeah. But there are people who are at different stages of their career moving on to different things, and they have been trying within Queen's to see how could this have continuity within Queen's, and have not been able to achieve that. So therefore, inevitably, there becomes a tipping point at which the team say, it's not looking viable from the Queen's point of view. We need to think about ourselves and our own careers. Absolutely understand that. And a number have moved on. So it will be very challenging for Queen's to continue this, I believe. If it isn't Queen's doing it, I'm not clear where the DFE virus to do it is either.
And does that, I mean, for me, that indicates a real lack of clarity about where this project sits. Is it language, education, heritage, mapping, records? We've heard that LPS virus has been removed or stopped. Where does this sit? This is, I mean, £6 million worth of public money. You said yourself, it isn't just Irish language. This is part of our history. This tells us so much. What is being done to protect that investment that has already been invested in this project? And that's my fear, is that there's a real lack of clarity about where this actually sits.
I think that's a fair point to make, and it has sat and been the responsibility of different departments at different times. The Department of Finance in 2022, and you'll have seen the meeting note of that, felt that it was better placed to be with DFC. It is an academic and research project overall. There's that element to it. We're very keen to make sure that we can secure the work that has been done so far. And we put that together, as I said, in my opening statement, because it is very important.
Can you give us a bit of clarity about what is being done to protect and to further that?
Yeah, and you can provide the information.
And we're working with Queen's at the moment, because in a sense, well, not in a sense, they are custodians of the thing, the database, the material. And the intention actually of working through to the summer was to make sure that was all properly lined up, closed off, put ready for whatever came next. We're hoping that will still be the case, that the people who are moving on from Queen's will still be able to do that tidying up, if you like. I know Queen's are in discussions with others about how that research material is best kept safe, if you want to use that phrase. Yeah. In parallel, we, the department, are looking at where do we go next with this? Because as Minister said in his opening statement, we understand there are customers, if you want to call it that, for the outputs of this project, as well as the important research it's doing around our heritage and culture. So we are actively looking at what those options will be, where the expertise sits across all of the languages Minister mentioned. This isn't solely Irish. And there are councils now looking for Ulster Scots street names, for instance. So we have to make sure the system, whatever that means, can respond to those needs of councils. Councils are getting us as a free service at the moment. Is it appropriate councils get it as a free service, or should it be a charge for service? There are many questions we need to work through here.
I suppose my last question is, like, do you see that this is collective, agreed, multi-year budgets? This is because we don't have one. It is untenable for staff to constantly move from month to month to month, and that isn't just this project. It's the community involuntary sector. But do you see that is a...
Yeah, of course, that's why we need those long-term budgets in place. Now, I wouldn't say that the staffing changes that have been here have been a result. I think it would be unfair to say it was a direct result of that uncertainty. There were other factors in play, but absolutely, yes, having those budgets in place. But the reason why this wasn't simply a case of us not having the money in our budget, there was an agreement that this was coming direct from DOF for 4 years, then that ended. We didn't get that clarity, but even if we had that money in place, that wouldn't have guaranteed because of where the staff were.
Okay, Mona Lisa, go ahead, please.
Well, Father Rolf Lig, Sean, you're all very welcome here today. And I doubt, Minister, if you have any photographs of me from the net, which you produced there in relation to Cathy, because most times whenever I'm on the net in that respect, I'm promoting the Irish language and promoting it as being inclusive and there for all to embrace. And that, in fact, is your responsibility as well too, Minister. As the Minister for Communities, that you should be encouraging and defending the Irish language and helping to promote it as a minority language. And unfortunately, given that it seems to be like a Pontius Pilate that we're actually receiving at the minute in relation to the place names and so on, it's still seen by the wider community, the Gaelgoers in particular, that it's a very negative response on the part of the Minister, but it's consistent with other actions that the Minister has taken in the past. And I'd like to ask you the question, Minister, apart from, we'll say, the non-funding of the Place Names project and your involvement in court cases and the likes of it that affects or could affect, we'll say, the promotion of the Irish language, I'd like to ask you specifically, what have you done as a Minister in order to promote, secure and develop the Irish language and ensure its visibility, because that's a very, very important aspect of it, is visibility to all, not only Gaelgoers, but people who live here on this island. It is part and parcel of our culture and our history.
First of all, I don't agree with the premise of your question, and I believe that this is a coordinated attack around this issue. I haven't seen your social media on this one, Militia, but it's perhaps like many of the others where this was lifted and ran as an issue, and many representatives of your party had said that I cut funding for this project, and that is just wrong. And it's disappointing that the evidence has been produced today and people still fail to grasp that. And if you really care about the language, there needs to be the end of the politicisation of the language. And that's what's happened at this committee today. And that's what's happened in the past. The things that you're accusing me of, I have not done, but in fact it has been Sinn Féin ministers that have contributed to these issues that we are talking about today. The Department of Finance was asked at the end of the 4-year period if they would continue to fund this project. They said no. Now, I wasn't asked if I would fund this project. This is not something that came, as I've said many times, on my desk. However, the Department for Finance refused to take this any further. So I think that that's something that's important to keep in mind, and I know that you're trying to build up a narrative here that in some way that I am hostile. I'm hostile to the actions that you and your party have taken around the Irish language, but I have been to Irish language events in this building, in the community. I have had conversations with those that really care about the language and want to see the ability to learn that and to enjoy the history and the culture that surrounds that. And I am more than supportive of that. What I think that you're trying to do here today is paint a picture that doesn't have any basis in reality. I believe in fairness. I believe in everybody being treated well. To answer your question, what is being done around the promotion of the Irish language? Within our system, we have the North-South language bodies that are responsible for that work. Although we do have some responsibilities within our own department, and there's money that is spent on that in four different programmes. But over the last 3 years, there's been over £3.5 million a year spent on the Irish language. I think it was Cathy Mason during the committee last week said that under my leadership in this department the coffers were empty. That's certainly not the case. That is a substantial sum that is being spent. So I have no objection to Irish. I do have some objection to the way people are using it.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I'm going to have to move on. Now, Melissa. I'm going to Pam Cameron.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for your attendance today, and to your officials as well. Just for clarity, can I ask you a few questions? So, did you, Minister, personally cut the funding for the Northern Ireland Place Names project? That's the first one.
No.
Okay, thank you. Did you fail to take a decision on the Northern Ireland Place Names project?
No.
And at any stage, did the Northern Ireland Place Names project come to your desk for a decision?
No.
Had the staff involved in the project stayed? And you did refer to personnel being the most significant element. I don't understand that, and maybe you can, I don't know whether you can talk about that or not, but had the project staff stayed, would you have funded those staff to carry on the work of the project?
We had plans in place that work could have continued until summer, until other options would have been brought to me to consider a sustainable way forward.
Okay. Could you tell me who funded the project between 2022 and 2026?
As the emails that have been provided clearly state, it was the Department of Finance.
Okay, thank you for that. And you have referred to some social media. I know the chair seems to think that's irrelevant, but I don't. And I do note that Colm has got in his own social media a statement, and he's referring to being delighted that the Place Name project will be able to continue its vital work with the help of the Economy Minister, and talks about losing this organisation, which plays a huge role in preserving our heritage and providing accurate translations for street signage, would be an assault on our culture. He's quoted saying, "This is just the latest desperate and shameful act by a Communities Minister who's clearly determined to make Irish invisible, despite having a duty to promote and develop the language. Political unionism," and that's not just you, Minister, that's me, that's Morris, that's Andy Allen in this committee, has further exposed their intolerance of the Irish language and obsession with attacking and diminishing it in whatever way possible. But Gordon Lyon's attempt to eradicate this organisation has failed, and Sinn Féin will not accept political unionism's crusade against Irish identity. We will continue working with all those committed to respect and equality to keep our society moving forward. Minister,
Thank you, Pam.
can I just ask, Chair, I want to get the same amount of time that everybody else is getting.
I'm thanking you for reading that into the record.
Oh, that's good, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
I'm giving you more time to ask the Minister. Have you a question for the Minister?
I welcome that because, Chair, you were very vociferous about wanting this meeting, about wanting this opportunity to question the Minister, and then you immediately handed over to the Deputy Chair. Just saying.
If I could remind you, Pam, our job is to scrutinise the Minister, so maybe you return that. I'll give you plenty of time on that.
Chair, I do note that you didn't actually ask the questions to the Minister when...
I'm trying to allow members time, which you're taking up. You have about a minute left.
Right, well, the Deputy Chair had 7 minutes, just so. But in the spirit of equality, I'm sure you'll allow me some more time.
Well, actually, Pam, can I just clarify? I also intervened during that 7 minutes and asked a question because I wanted to ask a particular focus question. So go ahead now, please. You've now about half a minute.
Oh, right, okay. That's the way it is. That's very good, Chair. So, Minister, I want you to take the opportunity to actually be able to answer questions, because clearly there are people in this committee who don't want to hear answers. Yep. They just want their voices to be heard and nothing else. And not a wonder there is sections of the community who think they're hard done by, because this party are telling them they're hard done by. This party are telling them utter lies, quite frankly. And it's terrible, it's hateful, and it's highly offensive to me. I'm really offended by the slant put on me as a unionist, quite frankly, by three members.
Excuse me, Pam. I will not allow members to interact between each other. If you want to come through the chair, please do that.
Minister, I don't know if you want to comment on how you feel about the statement that was put out by Colin Gildenew as the Sinn Féin chair of this committee.
Yeah, well, it was a fabrication and it had no basis in reality. Both the chair and the deputy chair put out statements saying that I had cut funding, and I don't know where they got that from. Because there's
Minister, you know very well. You remind me increasingly, Minister, like the arsonist who's running around trying to blame the fire brigade for causing water damage.
I get the chance to answer.
You have an excuse for everything and a solution for nothing when it comes to Irish language.
Can I answer the question, please?
Yeah,
you stated that I cut funding for this project. I did not cut funding for
you allowed
the
project to fail.
No, I did not allow the project to fail.
Held under your watch, Minister.
No. Well, now you're changing your story, but let's go back to what... Can you please let me answer the question?
Facts are the facts.
Can you let me answer the question?
You're quite happy to allocate 470,000 to US 250, but refused to find a way to allocate 90,000 per year to keep this important project running.
Chair, can I ask another question?
Go ahead, Pam. Yeah, Pam
Can I just ask a question? Because I'm very aware that questions are being asked and answers are not being allowed to be given. And I'm just wondering, I'm really, really wondering about your chairing of this committee.
Well, you can wonder away, Pam. I'm quite content with it. Go ahead, Minister, briefly, please. I'm coming to the next member.
The reason why he is interrupting is because he doesn't like the answers, Pam. The fact is that I did not cut any funding, but that doesn't fit his narrative. And what the chair did was make it up. He made it up. He said I cut funding. There's no evidence for that. There's no basis for that. There's no justification for him saying that. He made it up to suit his own political narrative. And I have provided the evidence today of how that is not the case. And they're ignoring the reality because they have their own narrative that they want to get out to distract, I have to say, from their own feelings. And this is becoming quite common now. They just blame somebody else for their own feelings, because Sinn Féin do have questions to ask around this, as they do on other issues, and they're trying to distract from it.
Okay,
I could
Minister,
not have
I'm going to have
set
to
out
move
more
on.
clearly
Minister.
what I've done.
Okay,
Some
Minister,
people can't accept
and when you reference the emails, I just will make the point, we asked for all emails, not just the emails that you were citing. So we will still, at the end of this meeting, require all information to be transferred, because what you didn't send us, and which I have received, is the place names project themselves wrote to you in November, raising urgently their concerns around the continuation. You didn't provide that to the committee, so there's clearly more information out there which we want to come back on.
Mr. Chairman,
However,
I'm happy to ensure that all of that information is provided.
Well, we haven't had it
Some of this I've not been cited on, but I'm more than content, Ian, for any information to be provided to the committee, because I am, unlike yourself, Mr. Chairman, I have been honest and I've been telling the truth on this issue, and I have not fabricated anything at all.
Okay, Morris, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and team, for attending. I have issues the way this meeting opened up last week. There was allegations that you had hatred towards the Irish language and utter contempt for Irish identity. I feel those are irresponsible and unsupported by the factual record which we've had sight of today, that the projects around the project's funding arrangements. Could you maybe explain how that makes you as a minister, and Pam and Andy and I as unionists sitting in this committee feel that someone has made an allegation that political unionism has a hatred towards the Irish language and its utter contempt for the Irish identity?
Well, I want to put on record again, I have no hatred or contempt for the Irish language. And look, I'm used to, unfortunately, in this job, being lied about and having things said about me that just simply aren't true in order to suit the political agendas of others. Unfortunately, that comes with the job. I think what has annoyed me more is that even whenever evidence is provided, when the facts are laid out, when my department has been open in providing the information, others are denying the reality that's in front of them in black and white. That's something that I struggle with, that people can't seem to accept the truth of the matter, and that they're just doubling down again and again. And if they think it's short-term political gain, maybe it is, but long-term it's not good for this place, and it's not good for people out there either who want us to address issues. There will be significant areas of disagreement that we have on issues around the Irish language and how it is dealt with in the public sphere. But it is particularly frustrating on this issue when it is crystal clear what has happened, yet some are still using it for political purposes. That's disappointing. What's also disappointing is, and we've had this again from the Chair and the Deputy Chair, is this continual reference to the musical instruments programme, to Ulster Scots funding, to US 250, which I think is really disappointing, because that does impact and affect people, because I'm being accused of showing disrespect towards the Irish language. Whereas in reality, the only disrespect that's been shown around this table has come from the Chair and Deputy Chair, who continually besmirch those that are involved in this and those that have applied for funding. The Deputy Chair has called these pet projects and vanity projects, and yet she's not given any rationale or set out what her threshold would be for cultural investment. The Republic of Ireland, despite, in my view, having less connections to the US 250, because of the historical and cultural connections, is still investing in that. Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we give the opportunity for people from largely disadvantaged backgrounds to learn how to play musical instruments? Why shouldn't we invest in Ulster Scots as well? And
Please, Minister, I need to have another member to come in.
I'm all for equality and for people being treated well, and I have not said anything that has denigrated the Irish language community, but what we hear repeatedly from the Chair and Deputy Chair of this committee are very negative words and language towards Ulster Scots and towards those that play musical instruments as well.
I have one brief question left.
No, I'm going to have to move on. I'm going to have to move on. Go ahead, Morris. You're very brief. Go ahead.
Okay. Look, that was in reference to the database that has been saved, and I would like to know if there's what reference there is in that database to Norse, Scots, English as well as Irish maybe we could have a breakdown to make sure that we're not disadvantaging the Irish language as we've been accused of, but in fact we may be disadvantaging the other minority languages that have been circulating in this.
Well, again, this is we can have a look at the research, see what they are, see what we can provide.
We can have a look. My only comment would be, actually, historically all these things are very mixed up, so be able to say cleanly it is this or that or the other may be difficult, but we can certainly look, Maurice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Mark, you're going to have to be very, very brief. You come in quite late there, and we need to get to anti-poverty strategy. Be brief as possible, please.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, you've denied that you have a pattern of behaviour as regards to the Irish language, but I don't think you can deny that there's now a pattern of results or outcomes that seem to be conspiring to delay the progress of the Irish language, and that's all they'll do. They certainly won't stop that progress. But surely you can understand how people would conclude, and people are concluding, that the termination of this programme, and we've all outlined its virtues and values previously, isn't born out of your antipathy towards the Irish language. I know there hasn't been, and there's no evidence of a conscious decision by you to cut the project, but it does seem that it's been allowed to wither on the vine. Are there any other projects that have been similarly funded through your department as opposed to by your department that have reached a similar crisis point in funding that we haven't heard of, or that the department, working with others, may have been able to continue funding for?
Well, with respect, Mark, can I just take issue with what you've said in relation to allowing this to wither on the vine? I want to be very clear. Not only did I not take a decision to cut funding, it certainly wasn't the case that I was holding off doing anything, not taking a decision, hoping that this would just peter out by itself. That is all false. When the Assembly question came before me, my understanding was that this was going to continue until the summertime, and it wasn't actually until media queries were raised that I had an understanding anyway and I think it came to a shock to people in the department as well, just how quickly this had come to an end because of the staffing issues rather than the lack of funding or the lack of contingency planning in place. So I didn't in any way allow this to wither on the vine, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Minister. Can I just add, I think this whole episode has just been the latest unedifying episode that we've seen in your ministry, and you'll argue from this or with this committee. But I mean, it's allowed a complete public blame game to take place between DUP and Sinn Féin, and the Irish language community is just fed up with having their basic rights used as or treated as a political football. Yeah, scrutiny is important, and we're here as a committee to scrutinise you, Minister, and the work of the department. But it is worth noting, and I will record that on the day that this whole issue blew up publicly, that Sinn Féin and the UP walked into the lobby together to vote against increased and improved scrutiny of executive budgets.
Okay.
Well, I would just say in response to that, Mark, I have no issue with scrutiny on this at all. I've come to this committee today. I changed plans in order to ensure that I could be here. I've answered questions. I provided emails. There is nothing that I have said that I am holding back or hiding in any way. Here's my frustration. It doesn't matter a bit. I have listened to what members on this committee have said today, and I could talk here until I am blue in the face and provide you with all of the information under the sun, but there are certain members that will continue on with their own narrative regardless. So look, we'll provide the information, but there are people here who are determined to argue that black is blue, and I don't think I've ever been in a position where we've been so clear and had so much evidence to present to a committee, and yet there has not been any acceptance of that. So it seems as if it's a waste of time, but I'm happy to do what needs to be done in order to allow you to fulfil your scrutiny role, whatever that is.
Thank you, Minister. And we're going to move on now to the anti-poverty.
Andy had a hand up, sorry.
Okay, so Andy, a really quick one, please. I was about to move on to anti-poverty. Go ahead, Andy, very briefly, please.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and apologies, Chair. There's just one thing came to me. Can I just firstly that out, obviously, as a unionist, I have no hatred towards the Irish identity, and I want to make that absolutely clear. I served in an Irish regiment, and I've made that absolutely clear on numerous occasions. I don't think any of my unionist colleagues have a hatred towards the Irish identity. Minister, can I just ask you very quickly, in the briefing note provided, there's a statement from, or there's comment from Minister Hargey at the time around the budget, and then also in your overview provided, it states that there was a bid submitted to DOF, but obviously no funding provided. Can you maybe help me understand what is the difference in the approach that you have taken to that of Minister Hargey at the time?
Of course, there is no difference in approach that was taken, and I've got the minute note here. Minister Hargey noted that she would be happy to meet with the project lead, but that currently no budget would be available in DFC to fund this project. Minister Hargey further noted in order for her to consider supporting the project, she would require the transfer of the resource required to operate it. That's what she wanted. I think that was fair enough. That is what we would have liked to have seen happen as well. We would have liked to have seen that baseline transfer over. We didn't get that. DOF ended the funding at the end of March 2026. We then were left to see if we could find a contingency, but because of the staffing issues, that wasn't allowed to happen. So I would say that my position is no different from Deirdre Hargey on this at all.
Thank you, Minister, and that certainly would be my view. Just one final point I would like to make, and there's been a lot of reference towards us being a scrutiny committee. It's also the role of this committee to advise and assist the Minister, and I think that's also an important role of the committee and one that we should reflect on. And I agree with Mark, not everything he said, but I do agree that this whole situation has been unedifying, and it does little to instill confidence on the ground. I think we obviously need to reflect on a more wider basis in that regard. Thank you, Minister, and thank you for the clarity that you've provided.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so we're going to move on to anti-poverty. Just might I say, Minister, I do think you should reflect on the fact, and you're seeking to kind of point out members of this committee's view. However, the real difficulty that you have here is convincing all of those people out there in the Irish language sector who repeatedly see the only effective actions that you have managed to take are largely based on removing logos, for example, from the department, blocking additional funding going into Irish language. So it's not about what you say, it's about what you deliver, and you haven't delivered anything in that. So we're the least of your worries. The problem is there's an entire community out there who believe that you have failed to deliver on the Irish language.
I would say in response, Mr. Chairman, that is not a justification for you to fabricate statements.
I haven't fabricated a thing.
You did.
And let me also say, Minister, you stated there we have provided emails. You've admitted within this meeting that you've only provided some, and you've asked your official to provide the rest. So we will no doubt keep.
I provided what you asked for. I'm happy to provide everything on this, and I think that will paint the picture in an even more clear way. But I've been honest throughout this whole process about what has happened, and not everybody can say the same.
Okay, moving on then to the anti-poverty strategy. Is it yourself, Minister, or Permanent Secretary?
Just a few comments on this, Mr. Chairman, to start off with. I know this was originally planned as an update session with officials led by Grania, but I did want to stay in just to make a few opening comments at this very important juncture in the development of the strategy, which will, I hope for the first time, provide an agreed executive-wide holistic framework that addresses poverty across all ages and societal groups. Now, I've read with care many of the consultation responses, and I've also continued to engage positively with a range of expert voices. Now, it's clear that the draft strategy had much to commend it, but I believe we have a duty to listen, to reflect, and to change course where necessary to better deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. So I have therefore asked Grania and her team to look in detail to see how this can be improved. So I've requested action with urgency and ambition to maximise all opportunities for collaboration and shared delivery across government, local government and broader partnerships. I want to fully exploit effective measures to prevent entry into and support exit from poverty. In my department, this includes vital work on employability, on housing, on fuel poverty, all of which are key priorities for me and on which officials are actively engaged. I also want to deliver refreshed funding approaches. We are currently working on that, and we will give you detail on that as soon as we can. And I want to make sure that we put in place targets and indicators which are within our ability to deliver and which will measure progress and keep us accountable. And I want to ensure that a costed delivery plan, which is detailed, will be presented to you in due course. So to go back maybe to Andy's previous point, the committee is here to assist and advise, and I'm coming in good faith to say I want to hear from you. I want to know what improvements can be made. I think we have taken the right approach so far in terms of putting together what could be agreed by the executive, going out for public consultation, taking those views and seeing how we can improve this document. I believe we share an ambition to alleviate poverty in our society. We also have an understanding of the complexity of the challenge, which is, of course, not helped by our constrained funding environment either. I believe this is one of the most important pieces of work that we can do together. So I'm saying I want to work with you, and I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Shan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've been talking about the anti-poverty strategy since literally the day and hour I became an MLA. Minister, if you had the budget, what would your anti-poverty strategy look like? What would your priority list be?
A number of things. It's hard to put it down just to one, but here's a few things that I think are most important. Fuel poverty, huge issue. Takes a lot out of people's disposable income. Or their income overall. So I'd want to ramp that up as quickly as possible. That makes a real difference. I would want to invest heavily in employment and employability programs because we know the difference that they can make. And I would want to make sure that we have a fully funded disability and work strategy as well. Because I think that is something, again, that is a massive issue that is coming down the hill towards us. I'd also want to make sure that we are putting the investment that we need to into our health service to help those that are not in work at the minute because of disability or other health conditions to get back into work. We have over 200,000 people in Northern Ireland on PIP. We have a huge number of people who are economically inactive as a result of their health conditions. Half of those health conditions are psychological issues as well. That is a huge, huge issue for us, and that's what we need to ensure that we tackle. We spend a huge amount of money keeping people on benefits. We're not spending enough money getting people well again. That's a flavour, anyway, of what I want to do.
And from my point of view, I agree with a lot of them. My focus as well would be on children and families, and I think the 15-page response that we gave you to the consultation probably go into to quite a lot of detail of that. In terms of the gap between the strategy that Northern Ireland needs and what you can deliver, what is your assessment of that?
Different people will have different views on the type of strategy that we need, but there are many key indicators, I think, that we need to see progress on. Around housing, new housing, condition of housing, the getting people into work, getting people into the condition that they can work as well. Those are the sorts of things that we need to measure. But I would say a considerable amount of work would need to be done to cost those. And that's what we've committed to doing.
Can I ask then around timelines? So have you seen an updated draft of the anti-poverty strategy?
There have been responses that have been coming through from departments. However, I'm looking for significant changes to be made. Grania will be taking forward that work. She'll be overseeing the team that is doing that, and we expect that to be done over the coming months. And I would like to be in a position that whenever you come back from your recess, that we would have that in front of you.
Okay. Have you seen action plans?
No, not at this stage, but the work will be going on simultaneously.
Okay. So you think by when we come off recess that we will have something tangible as a further or new draft?
Anyway, that wouldn't be...
On the strategy, yes. Absolutely. The action plan is actually the responsibility of will be the responsibility of the delivery board chaired by head of service. So that is being done in... Has
the membership of that been confirmed yet?
I'm going to have to come to other members. Come on.
Sorry. Has the membership been confirmed?
Melissa, go ahead, Melissa.
Minister, just as a local government spokesperson, this committee has had extensive engagement with local councils around the anti-poverty strategy, and there's a great deal of frustration at their sidelining on this issue. How will the strategy include local government?
Local government are an absolutely essential partner in this. This is a conversation that we've been having recently as well. We've received obviously the response to your deliberations, the report on those deliberations. I have also asked to see whether there's a way for local government to be involved in the governance and reporting of this as well, so that there's not only a perception that they're included, but that they actually are.
Well, there actually is a perception on their part from what they presented to us, even as a committee, that they have been sidelined in a sense. But anyway, moving on from that, Minister, you referenced there in your last answer that health and wellbeing is central to the strategy and that too. Maybe bring your attention to reports there in newspapers about language learning and how it is so important for people in terms of health and well-being. And embracing the Irish language. In fact, that's what they were commenting at the time. So that maybe that's something that you should consider too, as being part and parcel of that strategy in terms of health and well-being, that you're there encouraging and promoting the development of the language. Is that likely to happen, Minister?
It's not something that's come specifically in any of proposed actions that I'm aware of. However, we know from our experience working in the arts, whether it's musical instruments or any involvement in the arts, and I think you can include language in this, that's good for attainment, it's good for well-being, community cohesion, involvement, and all of those things contribute in part to how we deal with poverty. And I think it's a good example, actually, again, of how this is and needs to be an executive strategy, because there are so many elements that contribute to this. And
I know, too, Minister, just finally, that it's likely that the strategy will be with the executive by the summer. Is that likely to happen, or is it likely maybe to go on the long finger a wee bit like the Irish language strategy?
I suppose that will depend on the order in terms of our intention to either take to the committee first to get your views before we go to the executives. That remains under review. But look, I do want to emphasise we are wanting to move as quickly as possible on this.
Well, just to say, as chair, we don't want to be part of any delay, so we're prepared to take it very, very quickly, and we will make space for it. So we want to make sure that it doesn't cause any further delay. Okay, thank you, Melissa. Pam, there's Pam. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. It's a very important subject. And we do look forward to seeing a new refreshed version as well. Could you tell us what engagement you've had with other executive ministers in relation to this particular strategy, and could you tell us what have you got in terms of support, including financial support, in refreshing this? And I also wanted to ask you around fuel poverty, because clearly that's a key intervention in all of this as well. What engagement have you had with Department of Finance since the Executive agreed your fuel poverty strategy? Can you advise how much of an application the Finance Minister has given in the draft budget towards the Warm Healthy Homes Fund, which I think would be very positive if we can get that moving?
Yeah, so on the first issue, engagement with other executive colleagues, this is certainly a priority for me, but unfortunately we haven't seen the investment that I would like to see in this. We haven't been allocated any additional resource for the strategy at this stage. So I hope that others will get serious about this, see how important this is, see how it impacts on the work that they are wanting to do as well. And I hope that we get to that stage very, very soon, where we will see a more strategic look over the next decade to make sure that funding is in place for that. In terms of the fuel poverty, we haven't received any allocation for that yet. That will be something that I will be pressing for, because it is absolutely essential. It is one of the ways in which we can ensure we make most of a difference in people's lives. I've seen this for myself. I've been out and about and have been in the homes of those that have seen them improved through energy efficiency and other measures that can be put in place. It is life-changing, and it is hugely important for their pockets as well. This is a no-brainer, as I said in response to Shan's question. If I had money, that's where I would everybody, but it's particularly good for children and can be particularly damaging for children if it's not in place. So I'm wanting to ensure we have something that's effective, but I will need others in the executive to stand up and be prepared to give some additional funding for that. So I look forward to having conversations with the Finance Minister about that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to keep moving on. Cathy?
Thanks, Chair. Minister, thanks for that important update on that. Like you've outlined as well, every minute that we delay on this, we're watching people fall further into poverty, and more people fall into poverty. And I appreciate what you've said about co-design, and that's welcome to hear about that. But what we need to see is action in that co-design. And you will know better than I the sector and their involvement in this, and that their voice needs to be key and central to this. I want to pick up on an issue around childcare, because the childcare strategy and the anti-poverty strategy need to sit hand in hand. Within the childcare strategy that we have, the draft of it at the minute, we're not seeing any Sure Start targets. Sure Start, as you will know, is a wonderful organisation for those children in disadvantaged area, yet there's no costed plan and there's no targets attached to it. We've seen a subsidy scheme designed that was giving 15% towards the cost of childcare. The childcare costs have rose by 17%, so there's no impact on that payment to families. It's been completely absorbed. And we still have those families on universal credit that have that 15% barrier that's stopping them getting childcare and getting back into work. Have you, or why haven't you pressed the Education Minister on this as a Minister in charge of anti-poverty? Maybe you have pressed him. Can you give us some detail around that?
Yeah, well, look, on the first issue that you raise, it's important that we get this right. There have actually been positive indications around the poverty statistics. The most recent ones were actually going in the right direction, and that means there's no room, though, for complacency. I think, though, it does highlight that there are many actions that we are already taking, and this is what we need to see more of within the anti-poverty strategy, is outlining all of the things that we are doing, because we are doing significant work already. The strategy is one way to bring it all together and see what else needs to be included on that to make sure that it is moved forward. So absolutely, I want to work with all of those that were involved in the co-design groups. But the most important thing for me is getting something that actually works for the people of Northern Ireland. You're absolutely right. Childcare is essential to this, and in fact, when you look at the economic inactivity rate, a considerable number of people are not in the workforce but want to be in the workforce and can't because of carrying and other responsibilities, and that's why we need to have effective childcare support in there. You will be aware of the support that the executive has brought forward in terms of childcare, and obviously that was led by Paul Given, the Education Minister. We want to see more of that. I'm more than happy if we can get the funding together to make sure that we can make a real difference. And you're right on Sure Start as well. Those do genuinely have a transformational
You will be
impact.
pressing the Education Minister then for those, because they are key aspects around poverty?
I think it's important when we bring all of these together, again, we say, right, what makes the most difference here? Obviously, each minister will bring forward to me, and I think this is also important to emphasise, it is an executive strategy, so it's for all of us to bring
and there
forward as well.
You're right in saying that there's been large amounts of executive funding into this, but when we're seeing schemes like the subsidy scheme, where it's not having an impact on parents, they're not seeing their childcare fees decreasing, yet there's been a lot of money pumped into it. The design of that, clearly there should be alarm bells ringing, so we need to make sure that this doesn't progress when we see the anti-poverty strategy.
It would be far worse if there wasn't that intervention in the
Okay, I'm going to have to move on to other members here. So if Morris, Mark and Kelly, if I could just ask you really briefly, I'm conscious we have another briefing on anti-poverty waiting behind. Morris, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, you alluded to economic inactivity and the provision of opportunity to work your way out of poverty. How do you think the Executive can work towards implementing their own regional balance strategy to provide investment an employment opportunity in areas that are sadly lagging behind at the minute, to allow people to work their way out of poverty and at the same time contribute to society and have better well-being because they have a better belief in their life that they're actually contributing to society and bringing money into the house for not just basic living but for added extras. You need employment for that. What do you think the executive will do on regional balance?
So first of all, I'd say work is really important, but in regards to poverty, there's not one silver bullet that solves everything, and different people will have different needs. However, work is important, and we cannot continue on the trajectory that we're on because our welfare system is broken and our welfare system is out of control. And we have one of the highest levels of need in terms of welfare of anywhere in the UK. It's grown. We continue to put more and more money into it, and we're not seeing the results. Clearly the system is broken. Clearly something is not working. So there's lots of things I think that we need to do, but in order to do some of those other things, we need to make sure that we have the tax base in place so that we can provide the additional support that is necessary. But on nearly every metric, someone getting into work, it counts as an improvement to them, to their lives as well. So how do we do that? Yes, you're right. We need to make sure that we have the right jobs in the right places for the right people. Part of that is ensuring that people are healthy enough so that they can get into and sustain employment. Sometimes it's making sure that they're given the additional support to get the skills they need to get those jobs that are currently there. And in some instances, it's about making sure that we have the jobs there and that we're attracting that investment.
Okay,
And,
Minister, I'm going to have to move on. I'm going to have to move on.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Maurice. Mark?
Cheers, Chair. Minister, appreciate, and you've spent a bit of time on it again today, your focus on getting people into work. And I know you've the disability work strategy, and again, it's a core component of this. But it kind of oversimplifies things a wee bit if we consider that here in the north, 60% of working age adults in poverty are employed, and nearly 2/3 of children living in poverty are in households where at least one adult is in work. So how do you start to square that circle? What role can and will or have other departments played in doing that?
So, first of all, the reason why I started my answer to Maurice's question with saying that there are many different things that need here to be done is because I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying not to oversimplify this. This just isn't about getting more people into work, though it is a significant part of the overall problem. When you look at the number of people that are currently in receipt of benefits, it is getting out of control. And if you're constantly funding that, there is less resource to put in elsewhere. So you make an important point. How do we help those that are in work and are struggling? And in my view, those are some of the most hard-pressed people in our society right now. They seem to miss out all the time on the support that is available to others. So you're absolutely right. What do we do? And that's why I think we need to look at how we lower costs for people, how we make it easier to heat their homes. That's why the fuel poverty strategy is so important. That's why support should not just be available to certain tenures of housing, but we need to make sure it's available to those that need it most. So that's why we're working when it comes to improving housing stock, why work is being done to help with childcare costs, and why we need to make sure that we're spending the money that we do have well so that we can give relief to those that find themselves in that situation as well. Those are all the things we need to look at. But I want to be very clear. It's why I answered Maurice's question in that way. This is not about do one thing and it all works. It's about making it simpler and easier for everybody. This is why house building as well is so vitally important. Look at the big outgoings that people have, mortgages or rent, or the cost of heating their homes. If we want to help those that are really struggling, those are issues that we should be laser focused on. Building more homes and ensuring we build more social homes and making sure those homes are of good quality. Those are some of the most important things that we can do, and that is how we help those that find themselves in work poverty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Melissa had spoken about local government and the importance of role, the important role the councils have to play and are playing.
Really briefly, Mark.
In tackling poverty. But there's a real problem here that the council areas with the biggest problems in terms of poverty are those least able or least resourced to do so, which brings me to my favourite subject of the rate support grant. Now, I know you'd made a bid in the multi-year budget process for, I think it was 12.5 or 12.3 million pounds for rate support grant each year. You haven't got that. You got 3. But did you make that bid, or could you revisit that bid with an anti-poverty strategy sticker on it?
Really briefly, Minister.
So I think it would depend entirely on where do we get the most return for the investment that we make. And I have lots of statutory responsibilities, some of which are a real struggle in order for us to meet. The rate support grant at certain levels is not a statutory obligation for us, and that's why it has come under pressure recently. But I do want to re-emphasise the point that local government are partners, and I think there is more that local government could be doing as well to help us. There's much that they do already, but I talked about one of the biggest issues being around housing and getting land zoned for development, getting planning permission quickly in place, Minister, reducing costs. Those are things that can really make a difference.
I'm going to have to move on. Thank you, Mark. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister. It's not too often we hear from any ministers that you're changing course after consultation, so congratulations on that one, and I welcome that completely. Minister, one of the things that you've mentioned is the fact that communities will not be able to solve all anti-poverty issues. It is across departments, but you mentioned when you were talking earlier that measurement will be based on what can be delivered, and I'm worried just that the other departments that have a role in this, unless we actually have a measurement for them, it won't be delivered. So I'm just wondering, as this will eventually be an executive strategy, is there a way to put an anti-poverty lens in, a bit like we have equality impact assessments and rural proofing, that there's an anti-poverty lens on all policies across executive with the attention on reducing poverty levels?
Well, first of all, thanks for your comments at the start, but I suppose I would push back a little bit and say I've said throughout this process we would go to a consultation, we would listen. I think people said, oh, we've heard politicians say that before. I'm actually someone that meant it when I said that, and I had hoped that people would have gone down that road with us and engaged with us in that way, and some have, and I welcome that. In terms of an anti-poverty lens, that should already be the focus. That's what so much of what we do anyway. But what I do want to ensure is that we do have the right governance in place when it comes to it. Now, there are many ways in which there already is governance. We have the Public Accounts Committee, we have the Audit Committee, we're going to have the board that will be in place as well. I am aware, though, that the more and more we spend on governance and structures, that's less money to actually go where it needs to go to. So we need to find that balance, but I certainly believe that that's the way I already operate. I look at every project and every bit of spend and I say, is this something that's value for money? Will this deliver real change? Are we doing this in a different way? Is this going to make a difference to people? I haven't called it an anti-poverty lens, but essentially we are already looking through it that way. So let's have the conversation about the best way to do that.
Is there a way, not just for communities, but to have that across the executive, if this is an executive strategy?
Yeah.
If that was written into the strategy, a top line is that we need this to happen, and the executive signs off on it.
Happy to consider that. I suppose the other point that I would make is that we're going to have a considerable number of targets and indicators that come through on this, and it will be up to ministers and departments to ensure that they meet those targets, and that hopefully will be that anti-poverty lens for them.
Okay, thank you, Minister, and thank you to your team for coming and taking those questions. I just want to reiterate and bounce back that issue around the timing of the anti-poverty strategy. It's a crucial piece of work. You did say, I think, we'll have it ready when you come back off your recess. I'm going to speak to the committee here, but what I think this committee will be keen to commit to is we will meet during recess to get this across the line. So I'm saying don't wait until recess. If it facilitates the quicker passage of this, we will, I think, if we can manage to arrange it, commit to meeting during recess, so I don't want the summer lost.
You've just made a lot of friends among my officials, who I'm sure will be delighted to hear that. Yes, we will.
Well, they clash for that summer holiday, but yes.
Okay.
Chair, I'm very happy just to confirm. The Minister has been very clear with us. He wants urgency on this. He wants the teams mobilised. That's what we are doing. We are being very, very clear on not just what needs to go into the strategy. You heard the phrase significant change, and that's absolutely right. We will do that at pace, and I'm really appreciative actually of the committee saying that you will work with us in relation to that. So urgency is everything on this one, and so you have you absolutely have our assurance on that one.
Okay, thank you all. See you all again soon.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, members, we're going to go straight into our other briefing here, because I know we've run significantly over time, and this is a very important briefing that we're taking at agenda item 8. It's the draft anti-poverty strategy consultation report, and this is a briefing from the Equality Coalition, the NI Anti-Poverty Network, and the Anti-Poverty Strategy Group. So really key people within this area of expertise. The briefing paper for the agenda item can be found at page 181 of the meeting pack. And I'd now like to welcome the following officials to the meeting. We have Daniel Holder, who is Director of the Committee on the Administration of Justice and co-convener of the Equality Coalition. We have Kelly Turtle, who's a member of the Anti-Poverty Strategy Group, and Rebecca Bohr, who's Development Coordinator in the NI Anti-Poverty Network. So Kelly, I think it's yourself maybe who's going to make opening statement, and then we get to members' questions. Thanks
very much, Chair, and thank you members for having us. As a committee, obviously you're very familiar with the background to this strategy, including the statutory duty, including the many years delay, and the many hours of work that have been put in by the civil society organisations that we represent today. We've summarised that in our briefing note. I just wanted to highlight the most recent updates on that would refer to correspondence between CAJ and the Department for Communities and the Executive, which Daniel could speak to in more detail in the discussion, and the fact there have been some meetings between sector organisations in our networks and officials and the Minister since the consultation closed. But throughout that time we hadn't been provided with any information about the timelines. The information provided today is we were furiously scribbling down, so that's useful. But it's fair to say the publication of the consultation report was unexpected. It did lead to disappointment that there was no information with it about next steps, particularly this late in the Assembly calendar, as you referenced summer recess fast approaching, Chair. However, the approach that we made to the committee for today's session came from a realisation that the content of this report is actually very important. It provides a really important record of the views of the sector, and we were keen to discuss those with you. As we've highlighted in our briefing note, we welcome the consultation report as an objective, comprehensive account of the full range of issues raised during the consultation process. The Department's anti-poverty policy team have not shied away from the critical feedback received. There's been robust engagement with the qualitative data that civil society organisations who work on rights, equality and on the front line supporting people have submitted. It is important to note that only 14 community and voluntary organisations used the online survey, whereas around 118 organisations chose to make written submissions. So while the report is front-loaded with the analysis of the survey responses, we are less concerned with graphs and bar charts than with the substance of what people had to say. And in this regard, we're pleased the report has engaged fully with our feedback, providing a very useful thematic analysis and extensive quotes from a range of organisations. And what we can see in that is that it really reinforces that what we've been saying from the very start are the same things that have come through in this consultation report, the things that are needed to make this strategy fit for purpose. So we need a life cycle structure, particularly to capture the specific duties that the Executive has to tackle child poverty, but also as a model that just makes more sense. It better reflects the lived reality of poverty, because the Department's 3 pillars approach separates poverty prevention out from mitigation and exiting. It fails to recognise that people move in and out of poverty at different stages in their lives with changing circumstances. The life cycle approach is evidence-based, it is aligned with lived experience, and it's unclear to us as a sector why the Department has abandoned this approach. The report also reflects the calls from civil society for stronger governance mechanisms, including a legislative duty and an independent commission, measurable targets, lived experience involvement, cross-departmental responsibility, and a better approach to equality, intersectionality and place-based, including rural, analysis. Throughout this process, we have faced the same challenge from the Department. and from the executive that we can't produce a strategy that does not have the resources to be delivered. However, none of the changes that I've just outlined require significant additional investment. Getting those things right would provide the correct foundation for evidence-based, accountable policy making. However, we've also highlighted in our briefing note that the consultation report does reflect the strong message from civil society that these foundational elements should also be accompanied by a clear plan for funded policy interventions if the executive expects to move the dial on poverty. A range of suggestions are included in the consultation report, with a consensus that there should be multiple headline policy initiatives which we suggest should target children as the most at-risk group. We've highlighted some key suggestions in our briefing note: welfare mitigations and the protection of those, a child payment and universal free school meals. These are 3 key child poverty interventions from within the report that have broad support across civil society. There are other suggestions including improvements to childcare support, which I've already heard mentioned today, for low-income families. The current early education and childcare strategy does not effectively address this. Suggestions to protect and enhance the benefits that are available to pensioners, invest in programmes to reduce health inequalities, introduce an essentials guarantee within universal credit, tackle poor employment practice, not just employability, but poor employment practice and low pay, something that the strategy itself aims to do through the Employment Rights Bill, investment in social housing and increasing support available for disabled people and family carers. So there's no escaping the fact that ending poverty, as is the ambition of the strategy, requires investment without a clear set of costed actions and a framework for monitoring their impact. The draft strategy as it stands is incapable of achieving that aim. The Public Accounts Committee has already reported that the Executive is currently spending upwards of £850 million to £1 billion per year addressing the consequences of child poverty. And yet we remain stuck in cycles of short-termism and firefighting when what we need is courageous political leadership that can improve lives today and transform public spending into the future. That is the kind of policy that a 10-year anti-poverty strategy should provide, and we remain hopeful that it is what the Executive will deliver. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. I suppose the first one for me is regarding the proposed Anti-Poverty Commission. I would be keen to know how you'd see that working, and would there be a cost associated with it, and how would that differ substantially from, say, the Anti-Poverty Network that exists now? So how would the Commission interact and ensure delivery?
I think we can look at some of the models that exist across the water, but it would have to be funded, from the department. It would have experts that have evidence bases around poverty measures, but also would have people with lived experience of poverty as well. I think that's sort of the model that has been suggested, both with the expert panel as well as with the co-design group around a commission. I think you couldn't see that without also an act and having a statutory duty that is really fundamental in making sure that the Executive is moving in the right direction together collectively, with an idea that if there is an act with targets and annual review, that there's actually an opportunity for everyone to be moving in the same direction.
Yep. Daniel?
To add to that, I think the last few years have proved to us that if this is going to work, you're going to need a very strong legislative framework to ensure it's actually delivered. You cannot have a strategy that can be derailed by the whim of the Communities Minister of the day, which is what we've seen over the last 2 years in terms of the adoption process for this strategy. It wouldn't be unique in that sense. There are other strategies that I could point to that the Executive has adopted, not ones that are legal obligations, but things like the racial equality strategy that had very good content in it, but very little of it was actually delivered, and it was very difficult to enforce any delivery of what had actually been agreed. So that I think when the expert working group looked at this, they knew that the only way of ensuring not only having a strategy, but ensuring that a strategy was delivered, was that it would be locked into an Anti-Poverty Act, locked into a legislative structure, that there would be a degree of independent scrutiny and oversight by an independent commission to ensure that it would actually happen.
Thank you. And Yeah, and can I check what engagement you've had with the minister officials in the last few months? Because I'm still thinking about that issue around the summer and that. And actually, there's really no reason why this wouldn't be with us before the summer, and that should be Plan A. And I think we'll pick up on that as well. But in terms of engagement and urgency, what have you been engaged in the past number of months in relation to this?
We've had, I mean, we're obviously the litigants. We've had no contact from the department in terms of since the report came out. We struggled to get a response to correspondence both from TEO and from the Department for Communities. Eventually we had to issue legal correspondence which did draw a response out of TEO. We had correspondence back from the Department for Communities which again didn't commit to any sort of timetable, made reference to we might run an anti-poverty symposium in March 2025. It probably meant 2026, but I don't think there's no indication that actually happened at any point. And this is kind of, I mean, just to reflect on what the minister said there. I mean, if the minister has changed course and is going to urgently put a holistic anti-poverty strategy before the executive, that would be very welcome. I mean, it might mean we've wasted the last 2 years, but it would bring us back to where we were before the process was derailed in the first place. But we are where we are, and it would be a very welcome step if that actually happens. But I have to say, from our perspective, certainly we'd be incredibly sceptical that is what's going to happen at this stage because of everything that's happened to date. We've heard this before, that it'll be dealt with urgently, that it will be moved on, and be very concerned both in terms of content but also timing, that this won't happen, that this will not happen within this mandate. I mean, if you look at what we learned from the judicial review, and obviously the court found 14 months ago that the executive had stepped into illegality by taking over 12 months and not adopting a strategy, and a lot of that, almost all of it, was down to the delays within the Department for Communities of not moving at all in any tangible way on this. In fact, until legal correspondence went in to push it forward. So 12 months was enough for the executive to fall into illegality. We've now had 14 more months without this being put before the executive, which in our view is further illegality. That report, high-level consultation report, is extremely good. I can't see why it would have taken 8 months to produce, however, given the urgency around it. I also can't see why parallel work wasn't done alongside it when it was very clear from all the messaging around the sector, from this committee, from other places, from all the work that was previously done in the mandate, that the minimalist strategy that was consulted on was not going to be good enough. And it was obvious what needed to go in it because all the work had already been previously done, all the expert work showing what needed to be in it. Why was a new draft strategy not developed in parallel to meet the legal requirements of this legal obligation? Why are we sitting here with the idea, well, we've looked at the consultation, we've waited a few more months, we'll now put something together? I think the executive slipped into further illegality on what's a pressing legal obligation, and whilst it would be very welcome if that now urgently changes, I'd be quite sceptical that that's what's about to happen.
Thank you.
So the anti-poverty strategy group met with officials after the close of the consultation. That was some months ago now, but at that time we raised with officials the fact that the Northern Ireland Audit Office recommendations did stipulate that this draft strategy, when it was presented, should have also been presented with a costed action plan, including targets, and we've still not had sight of anything that looks like that. And to sort of hear it mentioned today that action plan will actually be the responsibility of the delivery board. We asked the officials, will there be proper public scrutiny and consultation on the action plan, because the strategy that we were consulted on was only a part of the picture, and we were told by officials that would be a decision for the executive, and so that the best thing we could do as civil society groups would be to press all of the political representatives if that's what we would like to see, whether there would be full public consultation on the action plan, partial, targeted, or potentially none. So that's a question that we're still sitting with as the anti-poverty strategy group that hasn't been answered and we'd be concerned about.
Okay, thank you. Coming to our Deputy Chair then, Cathy, go ahead.
Chair. I think you've outlined really, really well the current position now, and Daniel, I think you've really summed it up there as well, and you used the word sceptical a number of times, and I think that kind of highlights where my view would be on it. And just on that, there's just a couple of things I want to clarify. The Minister, I know you were here when the Minister was speaking, and he said that poverty levels are falling. Is that what you are saying?
No. So there has been a change in the methodology of how to measure poverty that just came in this past year. Across the UK, what government is using is administrative data now rather than self-reporting on income, and that has changed the methodology, and therefore the numbers, you can't actually compare them across years because it's a different methodology from the year before. So that's really, really important to understand. And also absolute poverty has been reset this year to the same as relative poverty levels. And so you can't compare it year to year, which is really important. So even if the metrics look different, the reality is that people are still, struggling the same that they were, last year, because you can't compare them year to year.
And where has that criteria come from, or why has that changed?
That has happened across the UK. It's
Okay.
the adding in of administrative data so that it's believed to give a more realistic and accurate picture of household poverty. But as Becca has said, the Office of National Statistics and Ministerial have been really clear that we should not be making comparisons. So it wouldn't be accurate for, as the Minister said, to say that figures are showing improvement, because they've been very clear that we can't be doing that. That needs to be considered a reset and a new methodology.
Okay.
And remember, it's a metrics that is about income, so it's relative income or absolute income poverty measuring, so it doesn't take into account the cost of living crisis and sort of increased expenditure and things like that people have to contend with.
Well, thanks. That clears that up, and it certainly, I'm assuming, doesn't take into account for, like you said, Kelly, about those constant life cycle of moving in and out of poverty as well, and doesn't take that into account. I just also want to just ask briefly around, the Minister referenced actions that have already been taken, and that's the reason why we're seeing poverty levels falling. Do you have anything to say on that, or do you think there are actions that have been taken that are seeing levels falling?
Well, I think the welfare mitigations have been extremely successful. And I think that that's something that the executive and Stormont should be proud of, in terms of ensuring that people who would normally have to pay the bedroom tax or have a benefit cap don't see that. So, for example, right now with the UK government scrapping the 2-child limit, like our families and our households with 3 and more children are going to be better protected, because not only is the 2-child limit scrapped, but also we have the benefit tax, or the benefit cap mitigated. So that's going to help those families even more. So that's something to be quite proud of here, I think, in terms of seeing. But I don't think that there are other indications that we would have a decrease in poverty.
Just to add, I think that's the best example that things the executive can work, but the anti-poverty strategy can't be just a list of things that have already been done.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of it is that it is a strategy to eradicate poverty.
Yeah.
And whilst the welfare mitigations is a perfect example, things that have been done within this institution have made a difference. There's a lot more that needs done to actually reach the objective of eradicating poverty, and all of that was already set out in the expert group report, and indeed the co-design report that were binned by the current minister, without any real explanation of those, an ideological angle to that rather than an affordability bit. Remember, a strategy was drafted under the last mandate that was clearly, went through the civil service, went through all those processes. It was clearly considered affordable, and it had a lot more in it than the current minimal strategy that went out for consultation did. So the strategy needs to move us above and beyond and towards that objective of actually eradicating poverty.
Thanks for that. Thanks,
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the three of you, and thank you to, I suppose, the cohort that you represent and the work that has been done by those that you are here representing today. I don't know what position we would be in without you. Can I ask how, I suppose, your assessment of what you've heard this morning from the Minister. It would be really interesting to know, and putting you on the spot a wee bit. But how do you feel about what he has talked about in terms of significant change, the urgency is priority, and I suppose his list of priorities to me, where are you sitting with that?
I think it's the urgency is very important, and we opened by talking about the delay and the impact that has on people who are suffering right now. We do, as a sector, want to get this right, so there would be some concern in the sector that a strategy that isn't going to make the difference it needs to make, but then becomes the only framework within which we can work in for 10 years, could do more harm than good. So we need to balance that urgency with making sure that we get it right. I think it's been very positive to hear the Minister's focus on housing today. It's something that feels quite new in terms of the certainly the discourse anyway coming from the Minister, because it's definitely something that we hear a lot on the ground. There's a desperate need for that investment in social housing. And regulation, which is something Becca maybe could speak more to, regulation of the private rental sector as well is a key one for people. So it doesn't always have to be about spending more money. It can be just making sure that people are safeguarded. And finally, for me, I think I'd be a wee bit concerned that there's been a lack of focus on children in what the Minister has said today, given that that's something our sector has identified as a key priority.
That was my kind of key takeaway from what he said.
There were three things that sort of jumped out at me. One is around targets and indicators. Looking forward to obviously seeing those, but the language around them were realistic and achievable. And I think sometimes that's used in order to dampen expectations. I think that we need to be ambitious, and that means obviously putting key headline policies behind those, but I think that a 10% reduction in poverty, for child poverty, is absolutely achievable and something that we should set our aim at. So that's one thing. I thought the absence of children in those three headline sort of policy areas that Minister Lyons outlined, I think was really evident to me. One of the reasons why we're pushing on a life cycle approach is because we know about what happens when you don't invest in children in terms of a lifelong impact that will have not only on the child, the family, the community, but also on future employment and employability and all of that as well. It was raised around the in-work poverty issues, I think is really important. But the main thing that flagged for me was I think there's a false narrative around the benefit system is too generous. We have too many people on benefits. I reject that. I think the benefit system is not generous enough because we know that people who are in receipt of universal credit do not have enough money at the end of the month to cover their expenditures. One of the things that we have in sort of a policy initiative that we forefronted was the rolling out of universal free school meals. That is a public health intervention for our children and our society. It is something that should be ring-fenced across the executive, paid for by multiple departments, including health, including communities, including DERA, in terms of figuring out how this actually can help the farming industry and the connection in terms of food sustainability. I mean, this is a really important public health and anti-poverty measure, but it's about universality, and that's really important because there are so many people in that threshold. Those thresholds are quite low, who are moving in and out of poverty throughout their lives, who are just not able to sort of get ahead of their month's expenditure. And that's what we see from people who are experiencing poverty. And that qualitative experience needs to be captured by government, because we might not see that in a headline, 19% of children after housing costs are living in poverty, but you'll understand and hear in families talking about the difference it makes in $15.50 a week for school dinners, having to pay that out of their pocket, what that means in terms of what their households can actually access in terms of, fun things in the summers and all those types of things. It's really, really hard for families right now. So I think that understanding the qualitative impact of these measures are going to be really, really important.
And just if I may on that point, I share actually your passion. What would your thoughts be in relation to the Minister's comment earlier that the welfare system is broken, in relation to what you've just said?
I think it is broken, but not for the reasons that he thinks it's broken. I think that it's broken because it doesn't actually guarantee that people's essentials are covered. There is a real penalty for trying to go into paid employment. The thresholds are such that if you lose your housing, benefit for going into work for a certain amount, then you can't actually take that chance. It is a rational decision to not to sort of go in and out of work the way that universal credit works. It's horrendous for people who are self-employed or for farmers in rural communities who are really unable to navigate universal credit right now in terms of the sort of monthly way in which it's assessed. And so there's a lot of issues with it, but also in terms of employment support and helping people, into work. I mean, the government couldn't find the 17 million for the local growth fund after the cuts to those employment supports just 2 months ago. I mean, if you can't find 17 million for a program like that, I mean, the question about employability support and how is that helping sort of the most vulnerable or the people who need that kind of ongoing support is a real question for us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, anything else then in relation to that session? Just let me, targets. So just if I can, targets are a huge issue and one that the committee has raised repeatedly. What target do you think should be set, or what type of targets should we be looking at set as key targets to ensure that there is a real difference made on poverty?
A lot of that, again, we sound like a broken record here, but I think a lot of that work was done within the expert working group report and the co-design group, and it's across different measures. Yes, some of and also there's a lot of assessment of the costs of poverty in terms of not intervening, and of course some of this does involve investment decisions in many areas. If we stick to the employment areas, some doesn't, of course. I mean, things like, anti-poverty strategy is a touchstone issue for socioeconomic rates, but so is the Good Jobs Bill. If that's blocked or obstructed in this mandate, it'll have a hugely detrimental effect on the anti-poverty strategy, because that is really the key measure to assist with in-work poverty, something that the Minister didn't really focus on. There was much more of a focus on economic inactivity and the benefits bill and things like that. Of course, reductions in the benefits bill wouldn't come to the block grant, so it wouldn't create additional resources in terms of investments into poverty. And I think that kind of needs to be thought through as well, because obviously getting people who are in a state of economic activity who are able to work into work is an objective I'm sure everyone shares, but that requires investment and support. I mean, if you've been out of work for a month, it's difficult enough to find someone who will employ you and won't query the gap in your employment record. If you've not been in employment for a long time, that's extremely difficult. You will need a structure in there with state assistance and support in order to enable people into work. So a lot of that would require investment decisions. So that there's all of those issues that I think were dealt with by this previous bodies that then lead into the issue of, well, if you do those things, then you will see a significant reduction in poverty, whether it's 10%, whether it's 20%. I can't remember the figures, but it was all in there.
And we have the anti-poverty strategy group's recommendations stipulate a 50% reduction, for example, in child poverty over the course of the strategy, which sounds like a lot, but it's, as Beck already pointed out, when you look at child poverty, that means going from 19 to 10, and that is achievable. I think there's been some great work done here to try and learn from other jurisdictions as well. So the Joseph Rowntree Foundation hosted a really fantastic workshop a few months back where organisations from the other devolved regions and from England talked about their journey with targets, and it's not straightforward. Wales have a really interesting experience there, and that the first time they tried to set targets, it didn't go well, it didn't work, and it set the process back, and they're not a silver bullet to just fix everything, but they're necessary. We're not going to see the kind of progress that we need without them. So we need to be sitting down and having a conversation about what targets are right for this place. The problem is that up until now, targets have been completely off the table, so we haven't even been able to have those conversations.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, briefly, please. Kelly. Yeah.
Kelly and Kelly, sing. And we're spelt the
Yes,
same, which is very
Kelly,
unusual.
yeah, the other Kelly.
Actually, just the last point that you made there was what I wanted to ask about. Obviously, today you were here and present whenever the Minister gave his update, which sounds like there's progress being made, but I'm just wondering, have you got the capacity and the ability now to go into, with the Department T and Greenway and others, to make sure that they, when they're looking at their targets, to work with them and to do that last push to make sure that they include the right things?
Yes, as much as the community and voluntary sector ever has capacity for anything, and it is an interesting point that, like, all of our organisations are doing this, you know, in addition to the work that we do, but we have been asking for that conversation on targets from the very beginning, from the expert panel report, as Daniel mentioned, and so it would be definitely something we would prioritise. We can get that opportunity, and there is to be progress on this issue. We would happily work with the department on that.
I think my concern was very much that when the Minister talked about targets based on what can be delivered, means a wee bit what we're already doing. You know, we can deliver on that. There needs to be a future plan, as you say. There needs to be targets that are aimed at a strategic level for Northern Ireland of how we're going to reduce poverty and by how far, and that obviously can't be the end to it. We'd love to have it down to zero. I'm just wondering, I know it's a lot to ask again, but it's just as a scrutiny committee, you will be approaching them so that we can then, when we're looking at this, we can go back and say, what did the Anti-Poverty Coalition say about this? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, listen, thank you, and appreciate your time here today. It is important work. We as a committee would absolutely urge the department to bring it forward now, revised, significantly different, and a meaningful strategy as urgently as possible. And we certainly stand ready to facilitate that, and we don't want to see any further delay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, any other follow-up actions then in relation to any of that? Go ahead, Kelly.
We maybe ask, write to the Minister and encourage him and his department to engage with the Anti-Poverty Coalition to make sure that when they're developing targets, that there's consideration of the work that they have done in identifying things that could help the Minister.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Members agreed to that. And can we include in that letter that we would urge the department to bring this forward with urgency before the summer if necessary, but if there's any slippage into the summer, we'll certainly not be. But I'm conscious that we don't want to get it the last week of the summer just because of a technical. So it's really clear that we're keen on it as soon as possible, and we will facilitate it if necessary. But actually, I would think it's better out before the summer. I mean, there's obviously a focus on it now, and it needs to be got over the line. Right. Anything else then members want to flag?
Chair, there is one thing my concern is. We obviously don't have a multi-year budget agreed as yet. If we do get to a multi-year budget, is this going to be too late to be factored into all of those other departments to ensure that there is that anti-poverty lens? So I think maybe a question in there about what actions can the Minister do to ensure that the anti-poverty strategy is considered by all departments, you know, whenever they're taking forward their budgets.
Members content with that? Yeah.
Sure. Just the previous section, you had alluded to the need for all information to be disclosed. Could we put that formally in writing to the Minister that we all get that? Because I want to get this put to bed ASAP. Yeah.
Well, I think that's useful, Morris. Thank you.
In relation to the place names project?
Yeah, for all information, all information in relation to the place names. Yeah.
No.
Go ahead, Pam.
Chair, also on the previous session, because we didn't do follow-up actions on that, Chair.
We're doing it now.
Yeah, that's good. Can we write to the Department of Finance and ask why the baseline funding wasn't transferred with the function? I think that would be useful, because clearly the department has said that the request has been made several times. So I would like to get that in writing if that's possible. And I would also, Chair, I don't like raising this, but I really would query what the point is in inviting the Minister to this committee today when he was not allowed to speak at times and to answer, and certainly to answer fully his questions that were being asked of him. I don't understand why this committee is behaving in this purely aggressive fashion. And I think it's been very clear today, outlined what the facts are behind this whole scenario. but the narrative that's being pushed out is not accurate, is false, it's misleading, and I did say it today, it's downright lies, and I think on the basis of the session that we've had with the Minister and his officials this morning, they would propose that we actually write to the Minister and apologise to him for the false narrative that has been going out over this particular issue, because I think it's unfair and it's unjustified. And I also, Chair, want to touch again on, you thank me for reading out your statement that you put out on your Sinn Féin website. I would ask you, Chair, did you put that out as Chair of this committee, that statement?
No, I don't put out any statements as Chair of this committee.
Because you referred to yourself as Chair of the Communities Committee.
Well, that's a factual. That's a factual,
yes.
But it's not as Chair. That's one of my roles. So, but I
would suggest that perhaps that's not appropriate, because clearly any statement going out as Chair of this committee has to be agreed by this committee.
I think so. I don't think anything's clear, actually, to be quite honest. And I think Morris underpinned that with stating that we need to see more information. I understand that the Minister maybe doesn't like scrutiny. I don't recognise the aggressive line you've used there at all.
Maybe you should watch back.
Well, I may do if I get time. However, what I will say is this: I understand that the Minister, in at times when decisions are being received very, very disappointed by members of sectors, and it's our responsibility, and it's all of our responsibilities, Pam, to scrutinise the Minister. That's all of our responsibilities, and that's what we're doing. But the Minister has clearly pushed back in terms of he doesn't like the scrutiny. I don't know. That's our role, to scrutinise him.
Sure, that's grossly unfair. You're saying we're here to, of course we're here to scrutinise. So we're here to ask questions, but we also need to allow him to actually answer the questions. And you're saying you might listen back to it if you get time. You need to listen back to that.
Well, I have a responsibility to manage time.
From this committee.
I have a responsibility to manage overall time.
Chair, you have a responsibility to actually allow a witness before you to answer the question you've asked.
I believe I did that.
And well, I think, Chair, you need to reflect on that, and you need to watch back and actually.
Okay, thank you.
See again your own behaviour.
Thank you, Catherine.
Chair, it's my role, very simply, to scrutinise the Minister on behalf of my constituents. Sinead, that's it. No matter what. I'm entitled to ask any questions that I want to ask of the Minister around this subject. If it's not being answered, or there's deflection, or he's making a statement that he wants to make, I am more than entitled to probe and go back and ask him to answer the question. I will not take any lectures from you, Pam, on your opinion, just because you don't like it.
Members, please do not.
Sure, I will not take any lectures from Pam just because she doesn't like my line of questioning. The Minister doesn't like scrutiny. That's very, very clear. I'm entitled to ask the questions, and I certainly will not be apologising to the Minister for scrutinising his actions.
Sure. Scrutiny would actually can only happen if you actually allow the person being scrutinised to answer the questions. And I would implore this committee, both the Chair and the Deputy Chair in particular, everybody to actually listen back and watch back on this committee and tell me in truth that the Minister was given the opportunity to answer his question. He wasn't cut off and continue. Yeah, you're laughing, Cathy. Sinead, you're finished because you've got your clip. You're ready to go. So that's your prerogative as an individual through the Chair. That's your prerogative to behave in that way. But it's not appropriate for this committee. It's not. It's really uncomfortable. And Chair, I'm really, really disappointed in you. I have to say, I worked for a long, long time as your deputy on the Health Committee, and we did not have this kind of relationship. This is really, really gut-wrenching and disappointing to me.
With all due respect, we didn't have this kind of a minister.
Well, there you go, Chair. You just said it.
Yeah.
And you're clearly showing your bias. And
the Minister
it's not appropriate.
I mean, this is a Minister who's been found in breach of the standards, Pam. Found in breach of the standards.
Chair, we all have a role to do. Yeah. And your role as Chair is to chair this committee, and it should be fair. It should be fair, and it should be impartial, and it is far, far from it. And I would seriously question your chairing this committee.
So go ahead, Morris, please.
Yeah, my point is simple. That we had a witness, and while the witness was answering questions, he was badgered. It's like something you would see in a BBC studio, and it's not the way that this committee or any other committee should behave. If a minister or a witness is asked a question, they should be given the time to answer the question, and if it's not to the member's liking, then they can go back in with another supplementary and challenge what has just been said. Not badger. It was badgering, Chair.
In a very short period of time, it's important that we hold it to focus, and it was a very short period. Very briefly.
Very briefly, Chair. The proposal has been made. I'm not standing over it. I will not take any lectures from any members on how I pose questions.
I'm going back to you, Pam, to check. Are you making some sort of a proposal about a policy?
Yes,
What is it? What's your proposal?
We apologise to the Minister. Given the facts that have been presented to us today, Kathy nodding, no. So this is what you're dealing with continually. This committee needs to make a decision.
Give me the wording of the proposal, please, so we can
we
vote on it.
apologise to the Minister based on the facts presented to us today that he has been misrepresented on this particular issue.
Okay. Is there a counter proposal? Or can we just vote on the proposal without it?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a proposal received. So we're going to go to. Well, can I take just a sense from members?
Support of the committee, yeah.
Do members?
Proposal.
Can I just clarify? Is it that this committee misrepresented the Minister?
Individuals on this committee have misrepresented the.
I don't feel.
Need the wording of the. I need the specific wording of the proposal. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah. So, Pam, what's the?
To put it in the record.
What's the actual proposal you're making?
So I propose, Chair, that we apologise to the Minister for, given the facts that were presented today on this particular Northern Ireland Place Names Project issue. I think we need to apologise as a committee because there are members of this committee who have represented or misrepresented the facts, and I still haven't heard today.
I'm just asking for the wording of the proposal so I can put it to members.
And with the context, maybe my wording may not be good enough, quite frankly, but the context of this is the facts have been presented to us and they have not been accepted. I haven't heard anybody else other than myself and Morris.
It's entirely up to members. It's entirely up to members to decide if they believe those facts or there are other facts.
Well, maybe that's the question, Chair.
I'm coming to Andy to get a sense here. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair. Look, whilst I sense and understand the frustrations right across the board, I don't feel that I have anything to apologise for. I don't think I, in any stage of my comments, have misrepresented the Minister or lambasted the Minister. I certainly did highlight on both occasions that I feel that this whole saga has been unedifying in how it has unfolded and developed. If individuals have things that they need to reflect on, then that's a matter for them. But I would reiterate, in looking at the Northern Ireland Act, that the role of the committee, and it's quite clear there, is to advise and assist Northern Ireland ministers in the development of policy. And I think obviously we need to reflect on that, but I don't feel I have anything I need to apologise for.
Okay, thank you. So can I just check, Clerk, do we have a clear proposal or do we still need
I have wording, if you want me to read it back.
Yep, go ahead.
Chair, yeah.
Yep.
That the committee apologise to the Minister, given the facts presented today, that he has been misrepresented.
By some members of the committee.
By some members of the committee. In relation to the Place Names NI project.
Chair, could you emphasise some members, not all members? Yeah, okay.
So,
do you want me to read it back into the record?
Go ahead, read it back, yeah.
That this committee apologise to the Minister, given the facts presented today, that he has been misrepresented by some members of the committee in relation to the Place Names NI project.
So do I now put that to a vote?
Yes.
Yeah. So members, can I ask, there is a proposal. We have confirmed the wording of the proposal. Are members content with that proposal? All those who are, please raise your hand.
That's 2, 4.
Yep, so the proposal. And can I ask members who are against to raise their hand?
1, 2, 3. And 3 against.
The proposal is lost?
Yeah, it's gone.
Proposal falls. Thank you. Okay, members, any further follow-up actions?
Chair,
okay, I'm going to take a...
Can I just ask then, what is the committee's consensus around this issue? Now the facts have been presented. The Minister has committed to sending on further information, and I'm suggesting that the committee come back to it when we get that further information, and we continue, as we do, to scrutinise all aspects of the Minister's behaviour and the Minister's conduct as Minister, and that we provide support where possible and advice where possible as well. But that's the role of this committee, in my opinion. So, members, I'm going to now go to a
short break. I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chair, and we'll be returning after the break with an oral briefing from Sport NI.
Before we cut us off, can I just register an interest as a member of the Harry Gregg Foundation? It's a charity, plus a host of other football bodies, just in case something comes up here.
Yep, it's noted. Harry.
Thank you.
Or noted, Morris. Thank you.
Chair, I'm a member of the GAA as well.
As am I.
Okay. Thank you, members. And now can I confirm that we've been taken out of broadcasting?
I'm requesting now.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
Resuming 12:14 with Cathy in chair. She confirmed.
Okay, members, your eyes don't deceive you. Colin, the chair had to leave, so I have stepped into the chair's role. So we're going to resume at agenda item 9, which is an oral briefing from Sport NI. Members, the briefing paper for this agenda item can be found starting at page 188 of the meeting pack. So can I first of all apologise, because I know you guys were waiting outside for quite a while there. Other items run on slightly longer. But I'd like to welcome the following officials to the meeting. We have Richard Archibald, Interim CEO of Sport NI, Gavin Boyd, Chair of Sport NI, Brian McKim, Interim COO of Sport NI, and Rebecca Hope, Interim Director of Sport NI. So Richard, I think it's yourself. I'll invite you to make a brief opening statement before we move to questions from members.
Thank you very much. You've already introduced everybody, but just to say, because we're joined by our chair, Gavin Boyd, Gavin will be able to give a board view if any of the questions that members ask, it's relevant to do so. We've been asked to cover 2 areas here this morning, Paralympic and disability sport, and the Tullymore National Outdoor Centre. Northern Ireland has had phenomenal success at Paralympic level over the last 18 years, since 2008, and we've had multiple Paralympic champions. Jason Smith, a 6-time Paralympic champion across 4 games from 2008. Michael McKillop at that same time, 4 gold medals across 3 games. Bethany Firth, who started in 2012 and is still competing to this day. Only yesterday she was announced on the swimming cohort of athletes for the Commonwealth Games team in Glasgow this summer, with 6 gold medals. And Kelly Gallagher, the first Team GB Winter Paralympic gold medalist in visually impaired skiing in 2014. So Sport and I supported each of those athletes through direct athlete support, now called Athlete Awards, financial support to their governing bodies to enable coaching, training and competition, sports science and medicine support as well through our Sports Institute. But critically, over the last 18 years, we have supported the development of a more systemic approach through those investments, so that today we see a larger number of athletes competing across a wider range of sports: wheelchair basketball, para-equestrian, bocce, para-triathlon, para-shooting, wheelchair rugby and para-swimming. So more sports and more athletes competing in those sports. Sport Northern Ireland is currently working towards reintroducing multi-year investment to sports organisations, and a review of how we invest in performance is part of that. Due to the significant investment from UK Sport and Sport Ireland at the highest levels of elite sport, it is likely that Sport Northern Ireland will increasingly focus lower down the development pathway, meaning our attention will primarily focus on the development of elite, future elite performers, and seek to give them a stronger foundation earlier in their career. Importantly, we're not just investing in elite athlete development. We want to see increased opportunities at a community or grassroots level. 2 of our largest annual investments across all invested bodies are to disability sports organisations, Disability Sport Northern Ireland and the Special Olympics Ireland. We have had long-standing relationships with those organisations, and they are important connections to the disability sports sector. Increasingly, we are seeing non-disability sports organisations, the likes of governing bodies, sports clubs and community and voluntary organisations, improving their disability and inclusivity offerings. This is really positive news. This is often referred to as mainstreaming, but it is creating inclusive sports, even though this creates a more complex environment for us to operate within than if provision was provided in separate disability-only clubs. But critically, it provides more inclusive opportunities in communities across Northern Ireland. We've been actively working at Sport Northern Ireland towards this in recent years, with all our programmes increasingly focusing on inactive people and underrepresented groups, which combined are the most inactive people in society. Last summer, we engaged with partner organisations about the role of sport and physical activity in the programme for government, and there was very strong support for the role that it can play in addressing inequalities in health, society and our communities. We're increasingly seeing organisations living this out through their actions and programmes that they are operating. At Sport Northern Ireland, we are looking to make the biggest impact with the resources we have available, and we are reviewing how we support the sports sector on an ongoing basis, and are working to change our practice and priorities as needed to improve the impact for people of Northern Ireland. On that basis, we're in the process of conducting a review of the disability sector that will directly inform our future investment approach. You also asked a question about deaf sports. We have previously supported deaf sports, but not in the last 10 years. We understand that Deaf Sports Northern Ireland has closed in recent years due to declining club members and a lack of volunteers. We have already reached out to Disability Sport Northern Ireland on this matter, and will also follow up with Deaf Sport UK and Deaf Sport Ireland to understand any needs or opportunities for the people of Northern Ireland. On Tullymore, Sport Northern Ireland remains fully committed to the outdoor sector. The review of the Tullymore National Outdoor Centre is looking at a wide range of options aimed at reimagining the role and function of the centre in a financially sustainable way. During the review process, Fathom met with a range of different stakeholders, including national governing bodies of outdoor sports, local political representatives and key partners within the sector. We value this input and will seek wider views from the public on the future of the centre during the public consultation period. The board received the report from Fathom at the end of March 26, which outlined potential options for the future of the centre. These options are currently under consideration by the board, and we hope to move to public consultation over the summer.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Richard. I will be parochial later on and ask about Tullymore, as I'm sure you knew. But I want to ask firstly just on the Deaf Olympics, and I note that you don't currently provide funding for that, and given that you will be required as a public body under the new Sign Language Act to produce an action plan around that, what is your current strategy or plan for this?
I think, as I said, we're currently reviewing our total investment into the disability sector. So, we rely on organisations, sports organisations or community and voluntary organisations coming forward and seeking support. So we try and make our programmes as open and available to as wide a range of organisations as possible. So we're seeking to understand what the needs are, but that's why we want to proactively reach out to organisations that may be relevant for this.
Just in terms then of the new Sign Language Act then, because you will be required to produce that action plan, is that something that's on your radar? Is that something you're aware of and are taking any action on?
I think it'll be part of our review of our investment in disability and the action plans we have. We already have the disability, the name escapes me, the annual disability action plan. So we will look at.
Okay. I'm sure, I know Kelly will probably pick up further, and I have a couple other things I want to ask though. I just want to ask about the geographical and the sport type spread throughout the Athlete Award, the Sports Institute and the other programmes. How do you guys ensure that there's regional balance around that and that all areas are getting a fair shot?
In terms of for the elite athletes or across all of our investments?
Across all of it, yeah.
I think it's something that we're increasingly monitoring. So I think one of our last programmes, the Olympic Legacy Fund, we saw a significant interest from Fermanagh and Mid-Ulster. So we are starting to track this in our programmes at the minute. What we recognise, because we rely on submissions coming forward, we're trying to reach out to councils and community planning partnerships in areas where there is lower representation. But we're increasingly bringing that data when we look at the investments that we're making.
So would it be fair to say that maybe hasn't been something that hasn't been the approach to date, but it's something that's being looked at now? There hasn't been that kind of regional balance within?
It's not that there hasn't been, but our investments have been driven by the organisations we support and those that are coming forward. I think we're more aware of where those organisations or athletes are from, and if we think about the performance sport space, overcoming barriers, and one of those being potentially regional inequalities, is something that we're proactively talking to sports about.
And I think if I can just add into that as well, I mean, if you bear in mind that the majority of the money that we actually invest in sports is in governing bodies, so it's at that level, and obviously as part of that investment programme we do have, you know, Section 75 obligations and various other rural needs assessments that we do as part of that. But again, the money goes in at that, if you like, overarching level. The programme that Richard referenced, the Olympic Legacy Fund, is a grassroots programme, and it's really where we get into the grassroots level investment that regional balance becomes a factor. So as he mentioned, you know, we included within the terms and conditions of the programme the opportunity for us to adjust the outcomes based on regional balance. But again, it's a developing area. And one that has challenges, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Okay. Just conscious time, I want to move on. So, Richard, you did outline the position there with Tullymore Outdoor Centre, and you mentioned there about the potential options and the board considering them. Can you give us any detail on those, what those potential options are at this minute in time, or when are we going to see them? When will they be published?
I think what I can say, and Gavin may want to come in and speak to this, but I think what has been clear is that we're not in a position to continue the model that we have been operating up to this point. You know, I think we've made that clear that it hasn't been financially sustainable, and therefore, you know, that's why we reached out through Fathom to look at what potential options are. There are some critical dependencies, and so we are talking to Forest Service and Newry and Mourne, because of the importance of new opportunities would require consideration of the lease that's in place. And in terms of the opportunities for community impact, we think a conversation with the council, we already had conversations with those organisations, but beyond that, we're, as I said earlier on, we're looking to engage with public consultation over the summer, but we're working through that at present.
Yeah, if I might add, Vice Chair, and actually it relates back to the comments that you previously made about regional balance and fairness of funding and all the rest of it. You will be aware, because it's been well publicised, that the level of subsidy from Sport NI into Tullymore was around about £1 million a year most recently. That is well in excess of even what our biggest sports get from Sport NI. And it immediately raised questions of fairness and equity with the board when we looked at this in some detail. And to be honest with you, it was hard enough to get the figures. We had to do more detailed analysis because the figures weren't presented in such a way that we readily understood what was going on. So when we put it in the context of some of our biggest sports having maybe 60, 70, 80,000 active participants, in excess of 100,000 members, and very particular groups using Tullymore where we're talking in terms of 2, 3, 4,000, it starts to call into question the level of funding that was going in there. Now, the Tullymore facility is a fabulous facility. The investment in the new building was made on the basis of a business plan which said there would be a certain level of demand. That level of demand was never achieved over the almost 20 years, I suppose, since the new building.
Why is there such a disparity in that, Gavin? Why is there such a gap there?
The honest answer to that, I couldn't give you an easy answer to that, except that I've seen it before. It's really, and I've had plenty of experience over the years of writing or reviewing business plans, it is usually easy to get a handle on the costs. It is much more difficult to get a handle on projected demand. And we have to remember, we're dealing with a relatively small population. There was a hope in the early days that this facility would be attractive to the whole of the island, but the take-up from the south has never actually been there. So it was a marvellous facility,
based on an investment, but the projections never came to pass.
And is that a result of not spreading, that not being marketed, the communication not being there? It just seems that there's such a huge disparity, and it's so unfortunate we've got to this position because, like you say, it is such an important centre locally. I know you'll know from meeting.
We of course we appreciate that. The fact of the matter is, it became obvious relatively early on in the life of the new investment that the numbers weren't being made. There were a number of reviews of performance carried out during the period from 2010 to 2021, probably thereabouts, and they all pointed to the same thing, that the numbers were never being met. Despite the fact that this facility was there, the market wasn't there for it. Now, I could go into all sorts of reasons, why it wasn't there. But for example, it was never a statutory requirement that mountain guides would have a particular certification.
Okay.
It was never a statutory requirement, so people weren't required to do it. And the truth of the matter was, even if it was, it transpired it would have been cheaper for us to fund people to go to Wales or Scotland or wherever to get that certification than it was locally. The population, the demand simply didn't exist. So the fact of the matter was, things were brought to head by Storm Éowyn, significant damage, significant costs required to reinstate the facility. At the same time, the board was looking at a model that was unsustainable. It was economically unsustainable because it wasn't meeting the business case requirements, but actually it was unsustainable in terms of equity and regional balance as well. So to finish the point off, although the board hasn't completed its review of the Fathom report, and there will be further engagement with a lot of key stakeholders, it is becoming increasingly clear that the model as previously existed is unsustainable. Therefore, we need to apply our minds to the community use of the facility. That may well take it, in fact, it almost certainly takes it beyond the remit of Sport NI, but we need to find that the successful future of this facility will lie as a community-based facility.
So, thanks for that, Gary. I suppose what struck me is like the alarm bells were ringing quite a while ago, and how we've managed to get as far down the line as we have now probably is quite concerning to me. But what I'm hearing then probably is there's likely going to be a relaxation of the commercial aspect of this and into a more community, because I know there's lease restrictions and things like that in place at the minute. That is somewhere we're headed in that direction.
That'll be part of the ongoing discussions as we work our way through all of this, and we're going to need support from representatives, we're going to need support from local government, we're going to need support from the Assembly some way or another.
And you are engaging with Newry Mourne Down Council around that as well?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Kelly, yourself?
Thank you very much, folks. Just to pick up on the Deaf Olympics, part of the requirement of the Sign Language Act is a recognition that sign language is a deaf person who uses sign language their first language. So no matter how many times you're talking to a group in writing, that's not it. You need to provide a video signed, to let them know they don't know what's available through yourselves because you're not speaking to them in their language. I noticed that you talked about going to disability groups to talk about. The British Deaf Association is the main point of contact for deaf groups. I don't think that they apply because they don't think it's relevant to them because they don't know. I think I would just encourage that. I always get quite frustrated when people assume that, as like everyone else, they'll just read something. Whenever deaf people, as we've got now through the Minister's Sign Language soon-to-be Act, that public bodies will have to provide sign language options to communicate with people. You talked about the review of the disability sector funding, and grassroots would be within that. And you talked about in the paper that we received about dealing with local councils. Is there any strategic direction provided to councils of how they support different grassroots sports across their boroughs or districts?
Grassroots across all sports or disability in particular?
All sports and particular disability, yeah.
Not any. I think we're engaging primarily through the community planning partnerships. So I mean, because those partnerships are recognising the specific region that they're responsible for, but no, we're not steering or driving that strategically. I think what we're trying to create is collecting in the understanding about what the needs are, and there is a lot of consistency across requirements and councils, and trying to provide programmes or opportunities or resources that would be beneficial to a wider range of groups and organisations as we can.
Okay, no, I just was wondering about that, because you would expect a council, if they were funding, to not necessarily have a percentage of the funding going towards disability sports, but to actually recognise the barriers to anybody. Like, for instance, I know of swimming clubs that refuse to take children with autism because of behavioural issues, and that's not really the child's fault. So I just wondered if there was any direction there for councils to ensure that if there are barriers, that they're being addressed.
Maybe not directly, Rebecca, you might want to speak this, but I think increasingly, because the programmes, the resource that we are putting out, we are talking increasingly about the underrepresentation, be that women or girls, disability. So actually that's a prerequisite or criteria for much of our investment. But in terms of, is there anything that's you'd want to share?
I suppose in terms of costings, we are aware that in terms of retaining a disabled member within a club is about £400, but to gain a new one, it's about £2,700. So we are aware of that costings, and we're working with governing bodies in terms of the programmes that they provide, and how do we make that manageable, and how do we make that more, the governing bodies more aware of that, so that they can plan that in and factor it into their costings.
I would like to see some strategic bones on that, just to say that, we have it within health and safety, we have it within building regulations, but we don't seem to have anything within the plans for disabled sport. That any government body has a lens that says it's not just about attracting in new people, it's taking the barriers away for them. Yeah. Just finally, Chair, just moving on to Tullymore. I'm a bit frustrated by Tullymore, I have to admit, because I was on a council whenever the Northern Ireland Aquarium was closed for exactly the arguments, Gavin, that you have brought forward. And whenever we changed the model of delivery, all of a sudden it became absolutely successful. And that was because of the inability of public bodies to manage what could be a commercial organisation. So I'm very interested. I know you've talked about a community and voluntary sector potentially model looking at Tullymore. Have there been any other models? Has there been a commercial review of the centre to see if there's any other models that could be used other than the community and voluntary sector? Because it's like passing on the white elephant at the moment.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, as part of the review, Fathom did look at a range of different options, which, again, the board are working through and looking at sort of critically. But I think up to this point, it's been really about trying to identify the barriers to creating a sustainable model. And I think one of the challenges has been the restrictions around the lease and the ability to generate commercial income. So whether there was a third-party operator, or whether somebody did something different in terms of how they ran the centre, that challenge would remain. So I think that's a very significant barrier that we've got to work through with the landlord, the Forest Service. And then again, back to the point the Vice Chair made about the local community. At the end of the day, the asset is separate from the services that we actually provide to the sector. We can and continue to support the sector, but it's about trying to find particularly a community use for that asset, which is of benefit to the local community. So again, I think we're still at the stage of, if you like, trying to work out what the barriers are and why we ended up here, before we've actually really got into looking at specific options of delivery going forward.
Just, the amount of money that's being spent on Tullymore, as a scrutiny committee, we have to think about that. And it is not being used at the moment. One of the things I'm concerned about is the talk of a summer consultation. We all know that summer consultations don't tend to get a huge amount of response because people have other things going on in their lives during the summer. Is there an intention to extend that consultation into the autumn?
We'll get as much
we have to get to a solution. Okay.
Yes, but not having enough consultation responses
and that
could be
will
a
not be a barrier to us getting to a solution. We will do whatever is required to engage with whomsoever we can engage with to get to a solution if we can deliver that. We have to. This is a significant public asset in a fantastic area.
I don't know whether you know, but I worked in the community and voluntary sector for a very long time on governance issues, and one of the things that I have been absolutely flabbergasted is that the financial figures that have been provided by yourselves include COVID when it wasn't open. So the risk on finances when a place isn't open, or the income generation should be really spelled out on that. But the other thing is, Stormy-Owen was one of those things. I've dealt with National Trust, who lost, my goodness, so many trees during that, and the issues that has had. But they had a plan in place if there was a devastating storm. I just wondered, risk management, why was the issues of income not being generated, even though it's been going on for years, damage to the centre or the facilities due to storm, given the fact that it's in a natural environment? Is there a risk management report that confirms what plans would be in place for all of these for the business?
Chair, I'm going to step in here, if I might, to help my colleagues.
I just asked for a brief on this, so just
we'll give you a specific response to that. But there's a general point that I want to make, and I can only make it up to a certain level. The board was concerned about the management of a number of issues over an extended period.
Okay.
I put Tullymore into that box.
But was there a risk report? It's quite unusual for a board not to have that.
We'll give you a detailed answer on that.
Okay.
But I'm going to limit myself to saying that in other circumstances, I would have expected that issue and the overall issue of performance to have been dealt with much earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Just before we move on, just want to pick up on a point there, and it's just for information, something that Kelly mentioned, that the Sign Language Act, I think we need to be really, really clear, it places a responsibility on public bodies now that goes way beyond just disability, and it's maybe a wee bit concerning that I don't know if we're getting that, but it's just for absolute clarity, and that is now a major responsibility on all public bodies. Sian, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing is around the review of the disability sector. I would be really keen to start hearing disability sport not treated as a specialist add-on, that it's actually ingrained in all participation and access to participation kind of plans for all sports. And I'm just wondering, in terms of your engagement with the governing bodies of sport, have those conversations taken place? And are there things like funding conditions, targets, accountability that could be levers at your disposal that could actually be encouraging that?
Absolutely, and I think that's expanding on the point I made earlier on about the increase we are seeing in inclusive sport from those governing bodies that wouldn't have provided that in the past. I think we are keen to see that grow, and it's not, we have had a reliance in the past on disability-only organisations. I think what we're saying is that is changing quite significantly. That's really positive. So how can we continue that? But that's not to the role of the likes of Disability Sport and Special Olympics Ireland are really positive. How do we work together, and how do we get a sector that is best supporting all of our people? But that is what we're working towards.
Okay, and then I suppose the other the question around disability sport then is, are there key achievements, I suppose, that you've seen over the last number of years that have led to some of what you've talked about in terms of specifically disability sport and engagement and the access to participation? Are there key things that you have seen that have worked, or are there things that you Sport and I have tried and have failed, or is there an assessment of that when you're looking at this review? Will that encompass that?
I don't think there's why we're looking at a review, because on an ongoing basis it's good practice to take a step back and actually see if the investment we are making or the impact that we're seeking is there. What we recognise, and this is especially the case since COVID, is that the sport and physical activity landscape has changed and continues to change. Therefore, how we support it, how we invest, the expertise we can bring to the table all must change to match that. So I think it's a recognition of that. What I would say is the conversations we've had with governing bodies over the last year about programme for government, about broadening what they do. Many of the organisations, sports organisations, are getting away from their structured competitions and regular membership towards different models that are engaging people in their later years, their midlife. So they're broadening out their offerings, but that's absolutely true for the disability sector as well. And as we're seeing, we are seeing sports really step up to the plate and offer a wider range of opportunities. We want to ensure that continues.
Is there a timeline for the review?
I think we're going to be in receipt of it very soon. So yes, we've got a draft. So we're going to be working through that as quickly as possible.
And I think if I could just add to that, I mean, I think we very much see Disability Sport as a partner organisation, and we share some of the challenges and concerns that they have about activity rates and participation levels. So part of the review is about working with them to understand not just what they do for us and with us, but also the wider implications for the sector generally. We recognise that at council area they have varying levels of engagement with people there, and so look, I think the process is about catharsis and about trying to come up with a solution that they can work with us to deliver over a period of time.
Okay, and then I suppose one of my questions just about Tullymore. A few of them have already been answered, but and Kelly had hit on it a little bit. But in terms of Tullymore's finances, the figures that we've been provided with do include those periods when the centre was closed or not operating normally. That concerns me, that we're not being given a fair breakdown, I suppose, of Tullymore's financial position, because it does include those periods of closure. And in terms of the current financial case against the existing model, will that be looked at for like evidence? Will we be, will you be looking at that in a way that excludes those periods of closure, or to try and give them a fair picture of?
It's not going to make a material difference to the review. The revenues, and Brian, you'll correct me on this. The revenues in Tullymore typically represented about 20 to 25% of the costs. Okay, so it wasn't within a country mile of governance costs.
If I make just,
but we'll certainly provide you with.
Look, we can write you separately and provide you with further analysis. But as the chair said, I mean, the cost base doesn't vary greatly over time. If you imagine, there may be some inflationary pressures, but ultimately what moves around is the revenue line. But we can certainly give you a bit more granularity on that, so you can understand.
I think like other members of the committee, I suppose my fear is just that this situation didn't happen overnight, and that it had been allowed, I suppose, to go on for so long with such uncertainty, and it is such an incredible asset, both as a community asset, if that's where it's going to go, or in terms of outdoor education. As a former youth worker, absolutely we need more centres like Tullymore, not less, in my eyes, in terms of that. So I'm concerned about how long it took for us to get to this position, and we now have an asset that is in limbo.
I think this is something we'll maybe pick up on afterwards. There might be more information that we might require then in terms of that, absolutely, if you're willing to do that. Morris, you're looking to come in?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've declared an interest at the start of this presentation as a member of the Harry Gregg Foundation, but the Harry Gregg Foundation have 70 members in our disability section, which is not an add-on, it's part of the Harry Gregg Foundation. And we do it over on a Wednesday night at the University of Ulster in Coleraine. Part of our strength is it's funded entirely throughout our other activities, i.e. sport. We have about 4,000 kids a week in various activities throughout the north and northwest. So funding wise we're sustainable, but it's trying to find out what can we do more to get involved with the enhancement of facilities for less able-bodied people to take part in sport, to get out there. We have a good attendance of parents on a Wednesday evening, and last night we were blessed with the Chief Executive of Korean Football Club, Dale Pride MacDonald, and Club Captain Lyndon Kane coming down, and they brought the Irish Cup, which caused a big stir amongst the kids, but it was great. But what we would be interested in is how can we get more involved to provide more facilities for the less able-bodied. And a wee caveat on Tullymore, it takes me back to a different, Shan would know this as well, a different circumstance but a similar outcome of what I fear is going to happen to Tullymore, and that's at Bushmills, where we lost our outdoor centre after decades of lobbying. It was an either or, either Bushmills or Tullymore. It became Tullymore, we lost Bushmills, and I fear that we're going to lose Tullymore as well, which will leave us nowhere in Northern Ireland for this activity.
In terms of your question about the Harry Reg,
Yeah.
so really you're asking about the facilities, the capital potential investment.
Yeah, we would like to do more.
Yeah. Look, I think we're running, we have relatively limited capital. The main investment we received last year was around schools and engagement with Your School, Your Club to broaden the community use of school facilities. But we also were able to secure through DFC Olympic Legacy Fund, so 2.1 million, and that was a match funding programme. Now, what we saw was huge interest from across the sector. I think 81 projects in total were supported, and the communities involved in those clubs and sporting organisations contributed to those awards. I think when there is limited resource, we are always looking at how we can be as targeted as possible. And what you're describing is a sustainable sports club, and that's the reality of the sports sector. So much of what we are seeking to support is run by volunteers, and it is self-sustaining. So we're eager to support that in whatever way we can. But on an ongoing basis, we're trying to reconsider where our investment is needed, but also reach out and broaden and try and get more resource in so that we can support organisations like yours.
If I might add an additional comment just to support that, we're very, very focused on our objective. Our primary objective is to have a healthier, fitter community through engagement in sport and physical activity. That's what we're about. And so that's why we're measuring active membership of clubs. That's why we're measuring membership of clubs. That's why we're looking specifically at underrepresented groups like women, like disabled people, and whatever. They are specific targets that we will have going forward. So I want to assure you that the board and the executive is very focused on improving the health of this community, physical and mental health, by getting more people active, in whatever way they can be active, and focusing in particular at those underrepresented groups. Now, it's going to take a bit of time, and the answers are different in different places. We had the finals of the Wheelchair Basketball League on Saturday, and that has come on wonderfully well over the last number of years. The key determinant in that was providing the wheelchairs. They're about £3,000 a piece. I was shocked by the aggression that was shown in the game, mind you, but the key thing was to provide those people of all ages with the equipment to do that. Now, that's a challenge for us as an organisation, and it does leaches back into the Tullymore conversation, because if we're spending money there, we can't spend money there. And we are very focused on trying to increase participation, but particularly targeted at underrepresented groups.
Yeah. Finally, Chair, we have 70 members of various ages and they're boys and girls. But I must highlight both Sean Campbell and William Montgomery, who have been selected for Northern Ireland at the bowling. So that's a wee bit of a success for us, you know. Right about. Thank you.
We shout out there, Morris.
We shout out for Sean and William.
Okay, I don't think there's any other indications from anyone. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll probably have a few actions at the end. We'll send them over to you. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, members. So, as the officials are just making their way out, there was, Sean, yourself, an issue you had raised there around Tullymore and those granular sort of financial aspects.
That'd be useful.
So, are you content that we write to the guys and ask for that? They did offer to send them, so I don't think there's any issues. Kelly?
I was just going to say we need a breakdown of the actual costs. Because I know from previous example of an amenity that had to change its model, the majority of the costs were generated by the organisation that was running the place.
Yeah.
So if we could get that breakdown and ask them about a copy for their risk management that was reported to the board. Yeah, it's just I'm very concerned that the finances and the lack of income is the main reason why.
Yeah.
Rather than actually determining if the costs were appropriate.
Yeah. I think that's stark to me, is how is there such a disparity in this, and the vital thing in this is that we do not lose, all members alluded to it there, that it doesn't end up the same as other areas. So,
and if we could also write to them and ask them to extend their consultation to 12 weeks, so it takes it into the autumn, because I think that summer consultations are not appropriate.
Particularly when you are dealing with this sector and the outdoor sector, where they will have their busiest period.
Yeah. What I will say is the Newcastle community are extremely invested in this, and any of the consultations that the guys have had to date have been really well attended, and they feel very strongly about it. So
you also forget that we have Andy McMurray on our Alliance team,
correct?
Who,
yes,
as a former outdoor instructor, has well briefed us to an inch of our lives.
Yeah.
So yeah,
no, correct.
Chair, I'm just worried because the comment was made: if we spend the money on this, then we don't spend it on that, and it's not an either or.
No.
It's also concerning for me. Tullymore, as Morris rightly pointed out, is our last outdoor centre. Yeah. And if it goes, what's left? Yeah. So where else could it go? What else are we going to do? Is that just one faction of... And I have to say, whenever I hear people keep on talking about underrepresented groups, and they completely leave out the fact that we have a changing demography in Northern Ireland with a massive ageing population coming through, and there's not a mention. Yeah. And Tullymore, to be honest, depending on its use, could be one of those solutions. I just think that the model options have been very timid.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, just let me say Tullymore is the last outdoor pursuit centre. Garda-Toll is still in existence, isn't it?
Is it government?
It's not. It's private, I think.
Private, yeah.
This is the education. This is the education authorities. So the statutory outdoor centres.
The education authority it has Garda-Toll.
Oh. No, I don't think. No, I don't know who has it.
I thought it was community voluntary.
Oh, sorry, Morris, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to back up what Shannon Kelly was saying there, we need to know the activities that are taking place at Tullymore to see if it's been properly managed, and if there's a way of diversifying to get more activities of a certain nature to make it more sustainable, then we need to explore that.
So could I then just encompass in all of that make a proposal that we asked, sorry clerk, that we ask Sport NI, like we've a short briefing here, we've very small limited details there, that we ask for a much fuller picture in terms of the costings, in terms of projections, and then the activities as well. Is that?
I had the financial breakdown of the actual running costs for TNOC, the Tullymore Outdoor Centre, copy of the risk management plans provided to the board, and a request to extend the consultation to at least 12 weeks, particularly over the summer.
And then Morris's point just around, activities.
Fuller picture of existing activities.
Yeah, and how like maybe expand it or diversify into other activities to make it more sustainable.
Diversification plans.
So I think that will probably fall in if we can maybe get a better picture of the potential options
and
that they're looking at.
Options. Okay, noted.
We were due to get a closed briefing with Sport NI over issues.
We asked, did they need to have any of the session enclosed, and it was confirmed not.
So I thought the governance issues that we had wanted to have enclosed weren't included in this briefing because
for that reason.
Yeah.
We can go back and ask for a closed session briefing on that issue.
Okay. Are we content with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just I don't want, as Gavin had identified there, that the risk management that could risk Tullymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, members, then we'll move on to item number 10, and we have already got through some of the matters arising previously, so we're going to pick up on item 10.6, which is a response from the department on the active ageing strategy and the department's engagement with other executive departments in relation to the strategy. Do members have any comments or views they would like to raise? No.
Sorry, Chair, it's just to say if we could ask the department as soon as they receive any of the action plans from the other departments, if they could share those with us.
Okay. Content? Okay, then item 10.7 is a response from the department regarding financial issues faced by supporting people providers. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise on this?
Can we ask for an update on the people and place review that's part of this, because that has been going on for a while now and that will have an impact on this type of funding?
Okay, members content?
On the people and place review.
Yeah.
Okay, item 10.8 is a response from the department regarding the committee's concern around welfare mitigations and the possible 2028 cliff edge. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise? No, okay. Item 10.9 is a response from the Department regarding the Severe Weather Emergency Protocol, SWEP. Members should note that at our meeting on the 11th of June, we have a scheduled briefing on the homelessness policy implementation, and members may get further information on SWEP and its implementation during that briefing. Do members have any comments or views they'd like to raise?
Just to say, I'm very disappointed that there's no consideration for SWEP to be put on a statutory footing, given the fact that this is a life-saving programme that the Department funds through the Housing Executive. It just is very disappointing. We're moving now into better weather. It'll come back again this winter again, where we have people, and when they're looking for support, they're going to be turned away, or they're offered alternative accommodation options that's just not going to be able to work. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Agree with you on that, and that's noted. Item 10.10 is from the NI Housing Executive regarding the Social Housing Development Programme and the mapping of closed areas. Do members have any comments or views they would like to raise on that? Kelly?
Morris.
Sorry.
You were up before me.
Kelly?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, oh my goodness, how does the Northern Ireland Housing Executive not have a map? Because this was published by Northern Ireland Water in October 2025, and the Northern Ireland Housing Executive identifies areas where there's need for housing. Now, we know that there's issues with closed capture areas, that not one connection can be made, and I already have it in my constituency where a housing development has been refused on that basis. I'm flabbergasted. I think we should write to the Department to ask the Department, given the constraints that on development that are being brought forward because of the underinvestment in Northern Ireland Water, why is the Housing Executive, their arm's length body, not mapping these areas out? Because my concern is that the areas that need social housing are the areas that can't be developed now. They should know that, because that will restrict the amount of houses that could be built.
Okay, Kelly, we'll just come back to that. Morris, you want to?
Something similar is that the areas that the Northern Ireland Housing Executive have identified, if we could have some sort of correlation between the Department of Infrastructure and the NIHE to get a map, should it be one that's made up, however, if there's none available, to give elected representatives an idea of where the shortfall is.
Okay, so we propose then we will write to both departments on that map and exercise then? Are you content with that?
Yes, I've got
The reason why I raise it as a concern is we've had the change to the HAG, the Housing Associations grant, and the areas that get the least amount are the areas where buildings can be made, and the areas with a higher amount is the areas that can't be built on.
Okay. Item 10.11 then is a response from Inspire Wellbeing regarding young people and supported housing. I know the Chair recently had a conversation with Inspire, who advised that their request was in relation to supported housing and that it is the remit of the committee. So the Chair then therefore had thought we should invite Inspire in for an informal briefing. Are members content that we schedule an informal briefing, Shan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at the figures, where I think over the last 5 years only 8 units of social housing specifically for those with mental health needs have been started, I do think that there is a very serious issue here. In terms of their letter their email in response to the letter from the Minister, I think it would be useful for us before they come back in, or before they do come into us, if we are agreed, just to ask the Minister, what incidents or evidence prompted the consideration of those regulatory arrangements around, I think they mentioned paragraph 4 of the, they're considering the introduction of new regulatory arrangement for supported accommodation for young people. So it would be good to get that information from the Minister for Health before Inspire come into us.
What incidents led to the initiation of this?
Or evidence that led to them considering the introduction of new regulatory arrangements for supported accommodation for young people. It's that paragraph 4 of the response, and it's page 242.
Okay, we're content?
Thank you.
Okay, then members, the last 2 items, item 10.12 item 10.13. Item 10.12 is draft response to the Committee for Education and the Holiday Hunger Bill, and item 10.13 is the draft response on the Irish Medium Bill. Just a couple of points I want to raise on that. I'm content with the draft response on the Holiday Hunger Bill. I'll take members' views on that. just on the Irish Medium Education Bill, I just have concerns around it becoming an issue in this committee, and I take on board the links around the Irish language strategy, and that 100%. I know you had mentioned that, Kelly, around the deaf strategy and stuff like that, a sign language bill. However, I think this specific bill, and if you actually look at the draft of the bill, it's very tiny bill, and it's solely focused on education and the workforce within the Irish medium schools. So I'm not sure that we should open it up in terms of this committee. What I would propose, Kelly, then on the back of what you had mentioned last week, is that we write directly to the Department for Education on their Irish language strategy and how they're taking it forward across the board, because this is a really niche specific issue around schools in general. So I'd be content if we maybe took those issues from last week and directed them towards the Department for Education. We can certainly copy in the Education Committee as well in that too. More than happy to do that too. But rather than it being, because I think the response we'll get back is that it's outside the scope and the remit of this bill.
Fair enough. Okay.
Are we content with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And content on the holiday hunger bill then? Okay.
So the response on 1213 is not to go?
Yeah, it's not, because it's not relevant. But we do write them directly to the department just on those issues, if that's okay. Okay, members, then that concludes matters arising for today. So we'll move on then to agenda item 11, which is correspondence. Unlike matters arising then in terms of correspondence, we're going to proceed them in bundles, and just to draw attention to certain items. I do ask though that if you do wish to draw out or highlight anything specific in the correspondence, please use the reference in the memo that starts on page 350 of the pack. So then the first bundle covers items 11.2 to 11.5. The first item that I want to draw out is items 11.2 and 11.3, which are from the clerk to the Committee for the Economy regarding the Petroleum Exploration and Licensing Repeal Bill and the Utility Regulator Support for Decarbonisation Preparation Bill. That's not easy to say in one mouthful. The clerk has advised that the Committee for the Economy has commenced committee stages of both of those bills and requested views from the statutory committees in relation to both bills. So are members content for the committee team to review the bills for intersection with DFC areas of responsibility and draft a committee response for consideration if it's appropriate? Yeah. We agreed. Okay, do members wish to draw attention to any other items in the bundle from 11.2 to 11.5? No. Okay, members, then the second bundle, which is includes items from 11.6 to 11.8, and the item I want to draw out is 11.8, which is an invitation from Action for Children to host the committee during Homelessness Awareness Week. Do members have any views or comments that they'd like to raise around that? Are we content? Yeah. Okay. Members, do you wish to draw attention to any other items from 11.6 to 11.8? No? Okay. Members, you have also then been provided with tabled correspondence memo at page 23 of your tabled papers with further items of correspondence, items 10.11 to 11.10 to 11.15. So we'll take those items in one bundle, and the items I want to draw out are 11.10, which is a memo from the clerk to the Committee for the Executive Office requesting that their committee is kept updated on the progress of the proposals to disregard compensation payments made by the Republic of Ireland's Mother and Baby Institutions Payment Scheme when calculating entitlement to social security benefits. Do members have any comments or views that they would like to raise, or are members content that the Committee for the Executive Office is updated with progress of these proposals? Content? Yeah. Yep. Okay, then item 11.11 is from the Assembly Business Office and is the Department for Communities Annual Report on the Social Fund for 2023-2024 for members' information. And then finally, item 11.14 is an invitation from Live Music Now to attend an event on expanding access to music for autistic learners in NI at the MAC on Tuesday the 16th of June from 10 a.m. So I propose that members should respond individually should they wish to attend. Members, Do you wish to draw attention to any other tabled items from 11.10 to 11.15? Okay. Okay, members, that concludes correspondence for today, and then we'll move on to agenda item number 12, which is the Forward Work Programme. There's a copy of the Forward Work Programme at page 382. Members, can I advise that the first session of next week's committee meeting is a joint meeting with the DERA committee and with infrastructure members also invited. It's scheduled for 1 hour, and we are due to hear from officials from the 3 departments in the Senate chamber. When that joint session is over, we will then meet remaining in the Senate for the usual committee meeting. Both committees will require a quorum, and it will be co-chaired with alternating committee members asking questions. Also, planning is also underway for the external meeting in Armagh on the 4th of June, and to have joint informal reciprocal meeting with the Oireachtas Committee towards the end of June. Do members have any other comments, or are you content to note the Forward Work Programme? Okay. Agenda item 13, which is any other business. Do members have any other business they want to raise? Okay, then agenda item 14 is the date, time and location of the next meeting. Next meeting will be 10 a.m. on Thursday the 21st of May in the Senate chamber, and that brings our meeting to a close. Thank you.
Committee Room 29, Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, Sound.